Jiang Zhuing came down from the combat cabin on the roof. Ling curiously glanced up. The combat room had already folded back up, and from inside the car, you couldn't see any trace of it. Thinking back to that deadly shockwave that had blasted from the front of the minibus, Ling was now completely sure this minibus was no ordinary modification. A normal setup couldn't possibly produce such effects. But what shouldn't be asked, Ling would never ask. After struggling through the apocalypse for so long, suffering under Hongyue, surviving the arena, she knew well how to stay alive in this world. Although we made it out of Fallen City, traveling at night is too dangerous. I remember there's a row of roadside restaurants up ahead. Let's rest there for the night, Jiang Lusher said. Okay, Ying nodded. Even without headlights, Ying could still drive steadily on the road. Jiang Zhuing sat on the sofa and began wiping her long blade. Her power had played a big role in their escape. After consuming a mutant evolution crystal, the strength and endurance of her electric-type ability had increased significantly. If it were before, she would have been exhausted by now. Where are you planning to go next? Ling suddenly asked. Jiang Liusher's group breaking through the guard squad and escaping Fallen City was completely beyond her expectations. This turn of events had disrupted her original plans too. Jiang Lusher was maintaining his sniper rifle. He looked up at Ling and replied, "We'll return to Star City base first and rest. Repair the base vehicle and study that special mutant blood core." Base City. I know it, Ling nodded. She paused for a moment and asked, "You're going to northern Jiangsu, right?" The moment northern Jiangsu was mentioned, Ran Shiyu's expression shifted subtly. She had evacuated with her family a little over an hour before the apocalypse broke out, but when it actually hit, her family mutated and died. Aside from Ran Shiyu surviving, her younger sister, who was studying in northern Jiangsu at the time, might still have a chance to be alive. A military officer who had helped evacuate her and her family had said someone was sent to pick up her sister as well. Later, in Zhonghai base, General Zhang promised he would send someone to find her sister. That officer must have run into some trouble too, Ran Shiyu thought. In an apocalypse, anything could happen. But after losing the rest of her family, Ran Shiyu deeply hoped her sister was still alive. It was a hope she barely dared to speak aloud, afraid it would all amount to nothing. Now that Ling had brought it up, she couldn't hold back anymore. "Brother Jiang, Ran Shiyu looked at Jiang Lusher, her gray eyes filled with a mix of emotions, hope, sorrow, pleading, and inner conflict. Jiang Lusher understood. Even though he had rescued Ran Shiyu, she had provided valuable intelligence about the mining truck in return. And since joining the Shering team, she had contributed greatly. Especially in today's mission, without her, things wouldn't have gone so smoothly. Jiang Lusher looked at her, then turned to Ling. "Yes, we're going to northern Jiangsu." Hearing this, emotion instantly welled up in Ran Shiyu's eyes. Star City to northern Jiangsu was over 1,000 kilometers. In the apocalypse, that was not a short trip. Plus, the situation in northern Jiangsu was unknown, with no base cities or safe zones nearby. Even Ling had said it was a harsh region. But still, Jiang Lusher had made this decision. Ling fell silent again, then asked, "You want me to guide you?" "I won't force you," Jiang Lusher said. If she didn't want to go, just organizing and sharing the information and routes she knew would be enough. In fact, bringing another person along was a bit troublesome for Jiang Lusher. Another woman, space in the vehicle was already tight. Ling was surprised. She had expected him to insist. If he had, she might have resisted. But now, "I actually want to go back to northern Jiangsu," Ling said suddenly. "I came here to find my parents, but they're already dead. Now my hometown has become what Fallen City is. I don't want to stay here." "You don't have to go back to northern Jiangsu for that," Jiang Zhuing said. "It's not that bad there." "I have classmates," Ling replied, her gaze seeming to drift as if remembering something. "The people who came back with me either died on the road or were killed by Hongyue. Now I'm all alone. I might as well go back and find my old classmates," she said. "You were at northern Jiangsu University?" Ran Shiyu asked hopefully. Ling shook her head. "No. There are several universities in northern Jiangsu." Ran Shiyu nodded. She wasn't too disappointed, she hadn't really expected a coincidence. Fate brought some together, but not everything could align. "We're here. Let's rest for the night," Ying's voice came as the minibus pulled over. A row of roadside diners lined the road, simple structures built by local farmers, now abandoned. At night, they looked dark and eerie. This road saw frequent survivor traffic. There weren't any zombies, but there were old bloodstains on the ground and windows, and wrecked vehicles lay scattered along the roadside. But this kind of environment was nothing new to Jiang Liusher's group. He grabbed a towel and went in to shower. When Ling saw the bathroom, she was stunned. She could understand strong ability users staying clean, but showering on a vehicle? Then, Li Yusin called her, Ling, do you know how to cook? Ling's eyes widened. See cook? Since the apocalypse, she'd only eaten whatever scraps she could find, mutant beast meat, at most roasted. Cook? In the middle of nowhere? She had never even dared imagine such a thing. When they first got in the car, Jiang Lushur handed over some leftover stewed meat for her to eat. At that time Ling hadn't thought that they made it in the car. Ling followed Li Yusin into the kitchen. The kitchen was very small, at most able to hold 2 people. But on the chopping board, in the open cabinet, a stack of all kinds of food was piled up. In addition to fresh mutant beast meat, there was bright white rice, fresh vegetables, all kinds of spices and seasonings, all fully provided. So rich indeed, even a refrigerator cabinet has, Ling felt in her heart. After the apocalypse, what was most lacking was food. Who knows how many survivors killed for a little bit of food. Seeing so many abundant ingredients, Ling couldn't help salivating a little. The ingredients are already prepared, you are in charge of stewing the meat. Li Yusin smiled and said, then began washing the rice. Stew meat? Ling looked at the chopping board with as much as 20-30 gene of mutant beast meat, somewhat dazed and asked, all these stewed? Yes. Li Yusin said this, then took out a few gene of mutant beast meat, cut it, then placed it on the induction cooker to prepare to pan-fry meat. Seeing this scene, Ling's eyelids twitched. Just for one meal, Jiang Lushur and the others consumed dozens of gene of mutant beast meat. If only meat was okay, the problem was there was also a large amount of white rice, fresh vegetables. In fact, Ling already noticed the supplies taken from Hong Yue's warehouse earlier were gone. But these RV-type vehicles often had many folding storage spaces. The supplies disappearing was not strange. What shocked Ling was, consumption every day this much. Jiang Liushur's vehicle stock must be very astonishing. But given the strength of the Shuring team, Ling thought if someone recklessly targeted this vehicle, they would only die miserably. During the meal, with high consumption, Jiang Lushur, Jiang Zhuiying, Ran Shiyu all ate a lot. Ling only ate about 70% full, and then offered to stand guard. Although she would guide Jiang Lushur and the others, Ling felt the information she could provide, and the ride in this vehicle to northern Jiangsu, did not count as an equal trade, so she would try to do what she could. Okay then. Jiang Lushur did not refuse. In fact, he and the Starseed were bound, he really did not need someone to stand guard. But Ling looked very determined, so he let her go. At night, Ling sat on the roof holding her gun. The strong physique of ability users means she did not fear the night's drop in temperature. After the apocalypse, night was boundless black, no lights. The next day while it was still dawn, Jiang Lushur and his group woke up, washed, then ate breakfast, and resumed travel. The minibus moved steadily. Ahead small-scale zombie groups appeared. These corpse clusters posed no real threat to Jiang Lushur and them. Almost no time spent, the group arrived at Star City Base City. At this time on the bridge several vehicles were parked, 4 or 5, these vehicles mostly modified, thick steel plates with quite a bit of fresh blood. On one vehicle, even tied a mutant beast weighing at least 4 or 5 tons, clearly just hunted and waiting quarantine. The minibus in a streak came to the back of this convoy. Jiang Lushur looked ahead, saw at least 10 more minutes until their turn, and immediately closed his eyes to rest. However, just as he closed his eyes, he heard footsteps nearby. At the same time someone knocked on the car window. May I ask Mr. Jiang there? Seeing Jiang Lushur nod, Jiang Zhuiying leapt up, with a whoosh, pulled open the window. Behind the window suddenly appeared a scar-covered face. This scar face probably around 30 years old, his face full of claw marks, looking very grim. He wore a military uniform, shoulder 2 bars 3 stars, still a fairly large rank officer. Jiang Zhuiying swept the man up and down. For officers of Star City Base City, she had little good feeling. They had just returned to the base city when an officer came to find them. Was this another trouble seeker? What business? Jiang Zhuiying asked in an unfriendly tone. The officer's brow twitched. This young girl looked not old, but her temper was fiery. Hello, I am Li Li, by the order of General Xia. Please Mr. Jiang come to the military district command to meet for a while. Although Jiang Zhuiying's expression was, I don't welcome you, the officer's attitude was actually pretty good. General Xia? Jiang Lushur remembered that the female officer who earlier had collected scientists was named Xia Sun, and her grandfather was one of the power centers of Star City Base City, General Xia Yongfeng. Earlier Xia Sun had come to ask him to cooperate to combat warlord He Tianhu, and he refused. Now General Xia Yongfeng personally sent someone here waiting for him. Jiang Lushur guessed it still had to do with that matter. For Xia Sun, Jiang Lushur totally wasn't convinced, and although Xia Yongfeng was general of Star City Base City, Jiang Lushur also did not think much of it. This base city, he wasn't going to stay long anyway. General Xia said the previous matters offended many, hope Mr. Jiang can come over for tea. Mr. Jiang's two friends also all reside in the villa district. Seeing Jiang Lushi frown, the officer immediately explained, please don't misunderstand, the villa district they live in is for ability users specially, not part of the military command. Jiang Lushi looked at Ran Shiyu nodded. It seems General Xia Yongfeng sincerely offered goodwill, raising one's hand and not striking a smiling face, going for tea won't take much time. All right. Jiang Lushi nodded. Mr. Jiang, do you want to return to your lodging first? The Scarface officer asked. No need, lead the way ahead. Jiang Lushi said. Even driving the minibus, even the base city's military command, Jiang Lushi was not afraid of anything. Ling curiously glanced at the Scarface officer. Jiang Lushi has relations with the Star City base city's army? But seeing Jiang Lushi's reaction, cold and aloof, probably the relationship wasn't deep. Star City base city's area originally was not large, only after about half an hour driving they arrived at the base city's military district command. Inside the command were all soldiers, each fully armed, giving a stern feeling. The minibus followed the Scarface officer's small vehicle. After going forward they arrived at a compound hidden among high-rise buildings, green tiles and blue bricks. This compound temporarily hung a sign, Xia Residence. Mr. Jiang, we've arrived. This is General Xia's private residence. General Xia is older, and usually handles military affairs also in his residence. The Scarface officer parked and said. The compound was quite large, outside the sun shone bright, walking in felt cool, with a sense of seclusion. Mr. Jiang, please you all wait in the reception room. The Scarface officer guided Jiang Lushi and the others into a hall of ancient style. Jiang Lushi walked around the hall, smiled. General Xia and old General Zhang have quite similar tastes. At that moment footsteps sounded outside the door. You came quite fast. Jiang Lushi turned his head and faced the door. Ha ha ha, inviting you here so suddenly, please don't mind. With a burst of hearty laughter, an old man in uniform appeared at the door. This old man was General Xia Yongfeng, before the apocalypse a military tycoon in one region, and afterward one of the helmsmen of the Star City base city. General Xia Yongfeng was advanced in age, his hair completely white, but his voice still loud and spirits vigorous, his spine straight, his walk full of strength. The old general entered the reception room and went straight to Jiang Lushi, extending his hand. You are Jiang Lushi, Mr. Jiang? I am Xia Yongfeng. Mr. Jiang, you are so young, yet you have established such a strong team, truly admirable. General Xia flatters me too much. Facing the cheerful General Xia, Jiang Lushi was not too cold. He extended his hand and shook Xia Yongfeng's. General Xia's hand was broad and strong, his palm thick with calluses, clearly a battle-hardened old warrior. Why stand? Come, let's sit and talk. Xia Yongfeng invited. It was only then that Jiang Lushi glanced at the person following behind Xia Yongfeng, Xia Sun, and at the straight-standing Zhang Hongyue. The scar-faced officer also followed, standing behind Xia Yongfeng like a javelin, likely his bodyguard. Having his bodyguard wait for Jiang Lushi and his group at the base city gate, Xia Yongfeng indeed showed sincere intention. I know all about the previous matter, it was Xia Sun's fault, Mr. Jiang, you need not take it to heart. Xia Yongfeng sat and said. Grandpa. Xia Sun immediately showed a flicker of displeasure and murmured a protest. She glared at Jiang Lushi. With her grandfather saying that, Jiang Lushi must be delighted inside. Jiang Lushi's face remained unchanged. Xia Yongfeng's words were nothing more than easing the tension between both sides. General Xia asked me here is for that He Tianhu, right? Jiang Lushi asked straight to the point. Xia Yongfeng's smile faded, his expression resolute. Mr. Jiang, you're so straightforward, good, I won't beat around the bush. He Tianhu has been ambushing our resource search teams, this time he even ambushed your escorting scientists team. We have wanted to eliminate this troublemaker for a long time. Actually you don't need to do much, just provide some intelligence, the rest will be handled by our troops. The base city army fractured, leading to the current situation, I will bear great responsibility. As he said this, Xia Yongfeng sighed, his expression turning somber. In the current state, the hardest hit are the common people at the grassroots. In this apocalypse their lives were already hard. We the army are their last support. Now even the army cannot be relied on anymore. What can they rely on? These old bones of mine cannot hold out for much longer. I can only do what I can, so, Mr. Jiang. Possibly speaking too much at once, Xia Yongfeng coughed twice. Grandpa, don't say that. Xia Sun's face showed concern, she hurriedly patted Xia Yongfeng's back. In fact it's not necessary. Jiang Lushi said. Xia Yongfeng slightly frowned, not understanding what Jiang Lushi meant. Jiang Lushi, in front of the general, what kind of attitude is this of yours? Zhang Hongyue dissatisfiedly said. Xia Sun likewise looked at Jiang Lushi with anger. Her grandfather had been very sincere. If Jiang Lushi treated her like that, fine, but to treat her grandfather that way was really too much. Jiang Lushi didn't even glance at her or Zhang Hongyue, continuing, He Tianhu is already dead. Already dead? Xia Yongfeng paused. Yes. I killed him in Fallen City. As for the corpse, it should by now have been fed to the zombies. His underling Lei Shi is also dead. Jiang Lushi said calmly. This, Xia Yongfeng was shocked. He had made many arrangements to eliminate He Tianhu, he even had his bodyguard waiting at the city gate for Jiang Liushi's group. And now, He Tianhu just died like that? Xia Sun looked at Jiang Lushi incredulously. Let's not speak of He Tianhu for now, Lei Shi's strength I know, Fallen City is their territory. You killed them there? Zhang Hongyue could not help asking. He clearly didn't believe Jiang Lushi. Xia Yongfeng looked at Jiang Liushi's expression, he did not seem joking. Though he had his suspicions, he still said, Hongyue. Stopped by the general's call, Zhang Hongyue unwillingly shut his mouth. Xia Yongfeng looked at Jiang Lushi and said, Then we must thank Mr. Jiang. Eliminating He Tianhu has removed a big harm for Star City Base City. The remaining traitors, seeing He Tianhu's end, will shiver behind their backs. Going forward, we will step by step root out more traitors, so the common people of Star City Base City don't have to endure zombie and mutant beast threats and internal disorder. Xia Yongfeng's tone grew somewhat excited, and he coughed again, this time more violently than before, his face flushing red quickly. Xia Sun lightly patted his back, looking anxious but helpless. I'm fine. Xia Yongfeng waved his hand to reassure his granddaughter, then said to Jiang Lushi, Sorry, old people get every ailment. If I weren't hoping to still be of some use, I wouldn't be so anxious. Haha. Grandpa, don't always say unlucky words. Division Commander Zhang has already sent someone to find another doctor. Your illness must have a way, Xia Sun said, her eyes already reddening. In the apocalypse she also lost her relatives, now only she and her grandfather remained together. They're just old wartime injuries. Even when medical conditions were good they couldn't be fully cured. What can we do now? Xia Yongfeng waved his hand. He had participated in the Southern War, carried old wounds. After the apocalypse he personally fought zombies and mutants, retriggering those old wounds. But at this time there were very few doctors alive, medical conditions even more primitive, the army doctors couldn't treat those old injuries either. Finding another doctor wouldn't help. At that moment a gentle female voice came from the side, General Xia, you were hit by a shell when young, right? There's still a shard in your lung, because so much time has passed the shard has been encapsulated by alveoli. General Xia paused, looked toward the speaker, she was a young girl from Jiang Liushi's group, pretty, gentle and dignified. A girl like that, even if studying medicine, at this age just out of school maybe, moreover just with the naked eye, how could she tell that? Xia Sun also suddenly showed surprise, no X-ray, how did the girl see through? That's correct, it's so. Xia Yongfeng said. The speaker, of course, was Li Yusin. She glanced at Jiang Lushi, saw he nodded, then continued to General Xia, my ability is medical. I can clearly sense your body's pain. Medical ability? Such an ability, General Xia Yongfeng and the others heard it for the first time. But the fact that Li Yusin could accurately say General Xia's old ailment already proved her ability. I see, Mr. Zhang's team members are not ordinary either. General Xia said. Xia Sun's eyes lit up. As the granddaughter of General Xia, she knew better than anyone how her grandfather's body was now. After the apocalypse, they gathered all the doctors in the Star City Base City, but all were powerless. Maybe Li Yusin's medical ability can help General Xia. Thinking this, in Xia Sun's gaze toward Li Yusin appeared expectation. Only that before she still doubted Jiang Lushi was talking nonsense, blowing up his own wind, now she had to open her mouth to ask. With her proud character, Xia Sun really found it a little hard to speak. But, just as General Xia said, the old ailment recurred, and bearing great pressure, his body was getting worse and worse, he really couldn't hold on much longer. And yet he still thought about restructuring the army? Captain Jiang, could I ask this young lady to treat my grandpa? Xia Sun mustered courage to say. Jiang Lushi looked at her, a proud little girl lowering herself, even her face blushing, really couldn't understand. Captain Jiang, we truly don't have a level 2 crystal core you need, but if there's anything you need, you just say it, we can provide it. Xia Sun continued. General Xia hurriedly waved his hand, Xia Sun. He said in a serious tone, how could you for just me, besides I'm already at this age, if I die then I die. Captain Jiang, about the earlier matter, I apologize to you, please let this young lady help check on him. Xia ignored her grandfather's rebuke and kept pleading. Yusin, you help General Xia check please. Jiang Lushur said. Okay. Liuxin nudda. Xia immediately showed a flash of joy, thank you. General Xia, please sit down. Liusin walked to General Xia. Xia nervously watched, also couldn't help sneaking a glance at Jiang Lushur. She didn't know how this cold-faced guy suddenly agreed to her request, and didn't first state some harsh trade condition. Jiang Lushur caught Xia sneaking a look at him, he of course could guess what that little girl was thinking. With Xia character, being willing to lower herself and ask was indeed not easy, but that was not why Jiang Lushur agreed. General Xia and old General Zhang of Zhonghai Safe Zone both were old soldiers who experienced war, defended homeland, now older, yet instead of enjoying peace, still fought to protect civilians. Such people, in Jiang Lushur's heart, he still admired. These people shouldn't be tormented by old war injuries. And with Li Yusin's kind character, he thought even more this way. She saw General Xia and thought of her grandfather, though different identity, what they did was essentially the same. Li Yusin stood before General Xia, though her eyes were open, in fact she had entered another spiritual world. In that world, Li Yusin was in an operating room, holding a scalpel. Her patient, General Xia, lay on the table. In his lung, a black shadow was devouring his life. At that moment, General Xia suddenly emitted a muffled groan, then closed his eyes. The remaining trio, Xia Sun, Jiang Lushur, the Scarface officer, all froze. The Scarface officer behind General Xia immediately placed a hand on the general's carotid. Breathing steady, nothing wrong. The Scarface officer looked up. Xia Sun then slightly relaxed, and hurriedly asked, Captain Jiang, why did Grandpa faint? Not fainted, just gone to sleep, convenient for treatment only. Jiang Lushur said. At that moment, Zhang Hongyue on the side coldly and sternly said, you better not be lying, if General Xia suffers anything, the responsibility I'm afraid you cannot bear. He had struggled to find a doctor, dispatched his confidants, all to show merit before General Xia, even to make Xia develop liking for him. But unexpectedly, the Shuring team could also cut in on this matter, he of course was unhappy. Jiang Lushur glanced at him, this person originally he didn't even regard, but this guy kept chirping beside, they were annoying. Treatment needs quiet, too many people affect the air quality. You, leave. Jiang Lushur said. Zhang Hongyue's pupils shrank, this was clearly aimed at him. Xia showed a look of difficulty, she glanced at Jiang Lushur, knew he was hard to deal with, and apologized with a glance to Zhang Hongyue. Zhang Hongyue's heart trembled. Commander Zhang, Xia whispered. It concerned her grandfather's health, she really didn't want to lose this chance. Zhang Hongyue's face darkened, his position now was extremely awkward. This Jiang Lushur actually let him be so embarrassed in front of Xia Sun. Zhang Hongyue glared fiercely at Jiang Lushur, then turned and left. As he stepped out, his clenched fist trembled slightly. You've basically made him die of anger. Ran Shiyu directly communicated in Jiang Lushur's mind. That's all you've got? Jiang Lushur mockingly said. That Zhang Hongyue who rated himself high was now slapped in the face in front of Xia Sun, and even Xia Sun initiated letting him go out, this humiliation was certainly major. But at least it became quiet now. The Scarface officer and Xia Sun both watched General Xia and looked at Li Yusin. They didn't know what using ability to treat illness actually meant, whether it compared to regular medical method. At that moment, Li Yusin placed her hand suspended in the air over General Xia's left lung, on her smooth forehead a fine layer of sweat beads appeared. Cough cough. General Xia, still sleeping, suddenly coughed fiercely twice. Chief. Grandpa. Amid the anxious calls, General Xia opened his eyes. Grandpa, how do you feel? Xia Sun hurriedly asked. General Xia was still somewhat dazed. How come I feel like I just slept, My chest isn't stifled anymore, it doesn't hurt. Really? Xia Sun asked excitedly. Then Li Yusin said, I only eliminated General Xia's inflammation infection, the shard is still inside. The shard has been in for so long, and General Xia's age is high, surgery is very risky. That's already a lot to be grateful for. With his body eased, General Xia's color also became rosy. Though he was truly happy, being an old general, his expression remained calm as Mount Tai. Thank you Miss Li, thank you Mr. Jiang. With this I can hold these old bones a few more years, and guard Star City Base City well. General Xia said sincerely. Thank you. The Scarface officer also looked grateful. Xia Sun's face showed joy, Miss Li, you are really amazing. She truly wanted to say that Li Yusin should stay here, if the base city had such a medical ability user, it would be wonderful. But when she looked at Jiang Lushi, the words that were about to escape her lips stopped. Thank you, Xiaosun whispered. Li Yusin also had followed Jiang Liushi's opinion before agreeing to treat the grandfather. If she had opened her mouth to poach someone, that would have been too unscrupulous. Jiang Lushi, seeing Xiaosun's reaction, felt somewhat speechless. This girl, when pleading, lowered herself, yet when gratitude came she became coy again. Girls like this, really hard to understand. At that moment, footsteps of a trotting pace came from outside the door. Report. A soldier appeared at the door and straightly saluted. What's the matter? Xia Yongfeng asked. Star City Base City has no shortage of daily incidents, but they are all bad. Either a zombie horde appears, or a resource search team had an accident. Report, Chief, just received news. Fallen City has had an incident, it's major, the soldier answered. They also had eyes planted in Fallen City, but transmitting information back isn't so fast. This was already high-priority intelligence sent at full speed. What happened? Be specific. Xia Yongfeng hurriedly asked. The founder of Fallen City, Hong Yue, is dead. It said she used her power to keep mutated zombies. When discovered, the mutated zombies died, and only her remains were left, the soldier said. For each sentence the soldier spoke, Xia Yongfeng and the others were more shocked. Human beings keeping zombies? Never heard of that. The arena in Fallen City erupted in riot, many guards were killed, many of the imprisoned escaped and are now wreaking havoc in Fallen City. Some ability users who long oppressed others were killed. Good. Xia Yongfeng slapped his thigh heavily. Fallen City had long been poisoning the region, but the army in Base City had fractured and couldn't liberate it. This was already a thorn in his heart. Now Fallen City was heavily wounded. This was the perfect opportunity for Base City's army to take it. Just now his body had recovered vitality, and now such a golden chance appeared. Xia Yongfeng felt full of momentum. The soldier's report was heard by Zhang Hongyue outside the door. He couldn't help himself and walked in, loudly saying, Chief, I volunteer to take troops to investigate. If the investigation results are favorable, we can take Fallen City directly. Jiang Zhuiying looked at him in his pompous stance and found it amusing. Did I invite you in? Furthermore, investigate what? If you want to investigate, you first properly thank me, beg me, I can tell you directly. Jiang Zhuiying said. Zhang Hongyue had just spoken when Jiang Zhuiying interrupted him, his face instantly darkened. I know you just came back from Fallen City, but the information you know is just surface level. Military intelligence is critical. You act without thorough investigation, just listening to you? That's a joke. Zhang Hongyue shouted angrily. That young girl looked about college age, knew nothing, and was poking fun here. And Zhang Hongyue had joined the army for over 10 years, crawling up to his current position. How could he bear someone humiliating him in his professional field? He didn't even care whether Jiang Lushi and the others killed He Tianhu. Compared to Fallen City, He Tianhu was nothing. Chief, there's no time for delay. Zhang Hongyue really didn't want to waste words with Jiang Lushi and them. Time now was everything. Those warlords probably received news too, maybe someone already acted. Wait a moment. Xia Yongfeng looked at Jiang Zhuiying and Jiang Lushi, and asked, It seems Mr. Jiang knows something of the situation? Please Mr. Jiang speak. Did you witness the process? What process? Hongyue and her zombie boyfriend, that's what we killed. Jiang Zhuiying said straightforwardly. Before this, Xia Yongfeng had the calmness of Mount Tai, but now he was truly moved. And Zhang Hongyue showed an incredulous expression. Even with his imagination, he could not conceive what Jiang Zhuiying was going to say. Jiang Lushi and the others had just gone to Fallen City for a day and a night, and killed the founder? Rioted the city? Could this be? What Zhang Hongyue originally thought was that the matter most likely resulted from internal strife. Don't speak nonsense. Zhang Hongyue couldn't accept it. This was far more absurd than killing He Tianhu. If according to Jiang Lushi and the others' words, they went to Fallen City, killed a warlord like He Tianhu, then killed the city's founder, and arrived at the base city unharmed? Xia Yongfeng was silent for a moment, then looked at the soldier and asked, Any other details? About the attackers. The soldier's whole body tensed. He didn't even recognize Jiang Lushi and the others, so after a hesitant glance he said, According to intelligence, they didn't identify who the attackers were. Zhang Hongyue's face immediately revealed a cold smile. Didn't know who the attackers were, so just took the credit himself? This approach? However, at that moment, the soldier continued, but many witnesses saw, a minibus burst out from Hongyue's villa district, charged through guard vehicles, and crashed out the gate. Even the armored vehicle couldn't stop it. Hongyue's guard squad was almost annihilated. Minibus. Zhang Hongyue's first reaction was disbelief, but immediately he stared at Jiang Lushi and the others. The vehicle these guys drove was a minibus? He had originally looked down on them. And Xiaosun too looked at Jiang Lushi in astonishment, so then, Jiang Liushi's claim was true? But even if it was a minibus, it might not be the same one. Zhang Hongyue still found it hard to believe. Right. On Mr. Zhang's minibus windshield, all spiderweb-like bullet marks, the Scarface officer's eyes lit up in shock. That vehicle is parked in the lot beside. If Mr. Jiang is willing, everyone can go look. Zhang Hongyue's face went white in an instant. Bulletproof glass? If there was still anything to look at, going to look would truly be asking to be humiliated. Now, Zhang Hongyue felt his face burning. Standing there he just couldn't stay. Xiaosun stared at Jiang Lushi as though seeing him for the first time. Jiang Lushi and his group had not yet mentioned anything about Fallen City, his big issue unmentioned. He only said killing He Tianhu. And yet the others didn't believe him. Killing He Tianhu, for Jiang Lushi, was truly just a side act. Xiaosun instantly felt, it is not Jiang Lushi who is arrogant, she was simply too small-minded, too short-sighted. Xia Yongfeng then slowly stood upright, looked at Jiang Lushi and the others, and solemnly said, Mr. Jiang, I Xia in this lifetime, admire strongest men most, those who shed blood and tears for the country. Regardless of your reasons, removing Fallen City's owner, you have reduced our soldiers' blood and sacrifice, and you've done a great thing for the common people who were oppressed, tortured, and abused. I Xia, on behalf of Star City Base City, express thanks to Mr. Jiang and all of you. The old general said this, slowly raised his arm, then executed a standard military salute. Seeing this, the Scarface officer and Xiaosun both were shaken in their hearts. And Zhang Hongyue's body swayed, his face turning ghastly. General Xia's body was healed, he did not previously salute, but now he performed it so earnestly. Even Jiang Lushi felt moved at this moment. In the apocalypse, when capable people do certain things, no matter the reason, they can change the fate of many low-level survivors, whether for better or worse. Without strength, you're just at others' mercy in the apocalypse. No need for that, Jiang Lushi said, then thought for a moment and added, actually, there are some things I do need. As he spoke, Jiang Lushi deliberately added, not much. Xia Yongfeng was stunned for a moment, then laughed heartily. Star City Base is too poor, Jiang Lushi thought. If Xia Yongfeng had been some kind of warlord and had asked Li Yusen to save someone, Jiang Lushi wouldn't have let him off without draining his resources. However, along the way, he had seen the ordinary survivors of Star City Base, working, helping the army, with decent physical condition. It was a stark contrast to Fallen City's slave-like survivors, who could be beaten or killed at will. Xiaosun's eyes flashed with surprise. She came over and said, Captain Jiang, just tell me what you need. Her impression of Jiang Lushi before was that he was greedy and asked for outrageous prices. But now, after he saved her grandfather, killed the Lord of Fallen City, and also killed He Tianhu, he was only asking for a few things. Xiaosun felt Jiang Lushi was hard to figure out, she really couldn't tell whether he was a good person or not. Jiang Lushi then asked for pen and paper and wrote down the supplies he needed. Some car repair materials and a few vegetables and fruits. Actually, after raiding Red Moon's supplies, his base vehicle was already stocked full of food. As for the materials he truly needed, Star City Base couldn't provide them anyway. That's it, Jiang Lushi handed the list to Xiaosun. Xiaosun glanced at it and nodded. Okay, I'll prepare them as soon as possible. But these materials, some metals, polyester resin, quartz sand, Star City Base had them in storage and could gather them. But what did Jiang Lushi need these for? Car repairs, Jiang Lushi said frankly. My ability is mechanical modification. He was now getting more and more used to using this ability as a cover. Xiaosun was still quite shocked after hearing this. She had guessed at his ability, but didn't expect it to be this. Then how could Jiang Liushi's strong combat skills and marksmanship be explained? She had also investigated Jiang Lushi in the past few days. Alright, okay. Xiaosun, full of doubt, could only nod obediently. After the car is fixed, will Mr. Jiang leave Star City? The older, more experienced Xia Yongfeng had already figured it out. Jiang Lushi didn't hide it. Yes, I'm heading to northern Jiangsu. What? You're leaving? Xiaosun's expression changed. But she quickly realized her reaction was too strong, so she added, in the apocalypse, most survivor teams find a base or safe zone and stay there. Northern Jiangsu shouldn't even have a safe zone. After she finished, even she felt a bit awkward. Actually, her grandfather and the others probably hoped Jiang Liushi's team would stay. Their strength was solid and could help the base. But when Xiaosun remembered how she had treated them before, she felt too embarrassed to ask them to stay. Her reaction and words didn't escape Zhang Hongyue's eyes, making him feel even worse. After today's events, both Xia Sun and Xia Yongfeng's impression of him had dropped significantly. He looked at Jiang Lushi and his group. It really was them who had stirred up trouble in Fallen City and achieved what he thought was impossible. In the end, it was just his own lack of insight that made him think Jiang Liushi's group was bluffing. Realizing this made Zhang Hongyue feel even more humiliated. "Commander, I'd like to request a transfer to the search team." Zhang Hongyue walked behind Xia Yongfeng and said. Xia Yongfeng looked at him deeply. He had long known about Zhang Hongyue's ambitions, and ambition in young people was good. But now it seemed Zhang's ambitions didn't match his abilities. "Search team? All right. Go and train properly." Xia Yongfeng agreed. Zhang Hongyue gave a sharp salute, glanced again at Jiang Lushi and his group, then turned and left without looking back. He didn't even glance at Xia Sun. He no longer had the face to. The search team usually operated outside, gathering supplies and scouting. The death rate was very high. Voluntarily transferring there meant Zhang Hongyue was putting himself in even greater danger. But even if Jiang Lushi saw this, he wouldn't care. "Yes, we are leaving," Jiang Lushi said. Xia Sun's eyes revealed a trace of disappointment. Survivor teams willing to leave safe zones and travel long distances in such a dangerous world were very rare. Jiang Lushi chatted a bit more with Xia Yongfeng and the others, then his group left. "Grandpa, what a pity," Xia Sun said as soon as they were gone. "What are you pitying?" Xia Yongfeng smiled at his granddaughter. "You used to look down on them and complained in front of me. I still don't have a crush on him. I just think, Li Yusin's medical skills, Jiang Liushi's mechanical ability, and their strength, it's all a pity." Xia Sun said. Xia Yongfeng agreed. But if Jiang Liushi's team wanted to leave, no one could stop them. In Star City Base, powerful ability users lived in a luxury compound. Inside this compound, a few villas were reserved for the most powerful teams. Most of them were empty, with only 2 occupied. Qiao Laoqi drove past the villas with 2 beautiful women. Suddenly, one of them said, "I heard someone just moved into one of the villas." "Huh?" Qiao Laoqi was surprised. He hadn't heard of any outstanding new ability user teams lately. His was the only emerging team. A few days ago, he had met a rather arrogant new team at the city gate, driving a minibus. But if he met them again outside, he'd definitely teach them a lesson. He was still the strongest among the newbie teams. Soon one of these villas will be ours. I heard the rooms inside are super fancy, with huge beds." Then, Qiao Laoqi gave a wicked smile, arms around the 2 women, who returned flattering smiles. Just then, a honking sound came from behind his car, interrupting his enjoyment. Qiao Laoqi turned around impatiently, then suddenly frowned. Damn, what a coincidence. As he turned around, he saw that annoying minibus. At this moment, Jiang Lushi rolled down the car window and said, "Good dogs don't block the road." Qiao Laoqi sneered and asked, "Do you know who you're talking to?" He was about to say more, but Jiang Lushi had already closed the window and said, "Drive." Ling looked at Qiao Laoqi, and a trace of sympathy flashed in her eyes. Qiao Laoqi saw Jiang Lushi close the window and still didn't realize what was about to happen. He shouted angrily, "Fuck. I'm talking to you." This guy actually dared to ignore him. Did that idiot think he could just curse and then drive away? Although killing was not allowed inside the base city, there were many nasty little tricks that could kill without bloodshed. But just then, he suddenly heard a loud roar. The minibus roared and accelerated straight toward him. Damn! Qiao Laoqi's heart skipped a beat. He was driving a reinforced modified off-road vehicle, much smaller than that minibus. Fuck! Are you crazy? Qiao Laoqi didn't feel too nervous. Jiang Lushi couldn't really do anything to him, he was just trying to force him to move aside. But repairing cars was troublesome. Even though Qiao Laoqi was arrogant, he still quickly turned the steering wheel and pulled the car onto the lawn beside the road. You just wait for me! Qiao Laoqi shouted angrily. However, the minibus did not pass by as he thought it would. The vehicle drove directly at him. Not only that, the minibus suddenly accelerated again. Boom! Qiao Laoqi's off-road car was hit hard, the whole body shook violently, and the 2 women beside him screamed. Qiao Laoqi gripped the steering wheel tightly, but even so, the impact made his blood surge. There had been a woman sitting on his lap, soft and fragrant, something that had felt pleasant before. But under this crash, Qiao Laoqi suddenly realized how inconvenient that was. He saw that the glass on the side of the impact had shattered, but fortunately, the metal bars were still intact, and the car was not too damaged. Then, the minibus backed up slightly. Buzz! Fuck! Amid Qiao Laoqi's roar and the 2 women's screams, the off-road vehicle was hit hard again. This time, it was pushed directly against the wall, gray powder falling down in clouds. Even with Qiao Laoqi's physical strength, his vision began to go dark. "You're insane." Inside the base city. Creak, creak. Before Qiao Laoqi could finish, he heard an extremely terrifying sound. Damn it. Damn it. The minibus was crushing his off-road car. The power of the minibus was terrifying. The off-road vehicle was already pinned against the wall, and under the minibus's pressure, its frame made cracking sounds. The steel bars began to bend one by one, and the car door on the crushed side bent inward. But the minibus itself was completely fine. Ah! Help! Brother Qi! The two women were shaking all over, crying and trembling, their heavy makeup running down their faces. Qiao Laoqi had no time to care about them, his own heart was pounding wildly. All the windows shattered under pressure, and the whole car creaked. This feeling of being crushed alive was too terrifying. Qiao Laoqi had thought himself ruthless and fierce, but he hadn't expected Jiang Lushi to be even more terrifying. He and his team, weren't they afraid of punishment from the base city's military? Get out of the way! Pushing the woman beside him aside, Qiao Laoqi climbed toward the sunroof. But just as he reached it, there was a loud bang. A mechanical claw-like thing grabbed the edge of the sunroof and began to contract. Ah! Qiao Laoqi's eyes turned red. The mechanical claw twisted and deformed the sunroof. He could never have imagined that the minibus could extend something like this. Inside the minibus, Ling's eyelids twitched as she watched. Even though she already knew Jiang Liushi's ability was mechanical modification, seeing a mechanical arm suddenly extend like that was still very eerie. As for Qiao Laoqi and the others, Ling didn't know if Jiang Lushi had any past grudges with them, but seeing their arrogant, cruel faces, she didn't feel any sympathy. Besides, the base city's military definitely wouldn't punish the shearing squad for something like this. Even if they did, Jiang Lushi probably wouldn't care. The three people inside the car screamed, completely unaware of that fact. Qiao Laoqi banged on the inside of the vehicle wildly, but as the off-road car deformed bit by bit, he finally fell into despair. Ah! Looking at the approaching minibus, Qiao Laoqi's legs suddenly trembled, and he felt a warm wetness between them. The stench of urine quickly filled the off-road car. Then the minibus stopped and backed away. With a loud crash, the completely deformed off-road car, which had been pinned against the wall, fell heavily to the ground. Should we kill him? Ling suddenly asked. Jiang Lushi looked at her. Inside the car, the sudden silence made the two women stop screaming. But then, a dark shadow appeared in front of the car. A doll-like face, looking about 15 or 16 years old, appeared at the deformed window. She was right behind Qiao Laoqi and gave them a sweet smile. But in the next instant, a cold flash gleamed, and before Qiao Laoqi could react, his eyes widened, his legs kicked, and a gash appeared on his throat, blood spurting wildly. Ah! The spraying blood quickly covered the remaining glass of the off-road car and even splashed out through the window. The deformed off-road car was soaked in blood, no different from one ravaged by mutant beasts. As life quickly drained from his body, Qiao Laoqi saw the minibus drive toward a villa. So, the people who had just moved into the villa were them. The boss is back. Brother Jiang. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan had already heard the commotion nearby. When they ran out, they saw the familiar minibus stop in front of the door. Both of them were overjoyed. Although they had been living in this big house, their hands had been itching. This peaceful life made them uneasy. Just thinking about the zombies and mutant beasts outside took away any feeling of safety. At this moment, Jiang Lushi and the others got out of the car. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan greeted Jiang Zhuiying and Ran Shiyu one after another, but soon their expressions became strange. Brother Jiang, how come you went out for a while and came back with an older lowly? Zhang Hai asked quietly. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan both looked at Ling with strange expressions. This is Ling. She's going with us to northern Jiangsu, Jiang Lushi introduced. To northern Jiangsu? Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan looked at each other. Well, that's fine too. There's nothing worth staying for in Star City Base. I've been here for 2 days and feel like I'm growing mold. Zhang Hai said loudly. Sun Kuan also nodded beside him. In the shearing squad, they didn't feel that constant life-or-death pressure, the daily fear of dying. On the contrary, every time they woke up, they felt full of energy. They had also found the passion for battle. Then get ready. We'll rest for 2 days and leave the day after tomorrow, Jiang Lushi said. Ran Shiyu looked at Jiang Lushi and at the other members of the shearing squad, her eyes showing a trace of gratitude. Leaving so soon clearly showed they understood her inner anxiety. Although a long time had already passed, and perhaps her little sister had turned into a zombie from the very beginning, or maybe even died in the early days of the apocalypse. But no matter what, Ran Shiyu still wanted to confirm it for herself. When she was helpless and in despair, she met Jiang Lushi. Now she also had the ability to fight. Someone fighting in the ability user residential area? The Star City base military quickly received the news. When they arrived on the scene, their eyelids all twitched uncontrollably. This off-road vehicle that looked like a pile of scrap metal, how did it end up like this? Just then, a military-licensed sedan quickly drove over. In the Star City base military, there was no one who didn't recognize this car. It's General Xia's car. Looks like it alarmed the old general. From the sedan, the scar-faced officer stepped out. Regimental Mandeli. The squad captain's eyes lit up and he immediately went up to greet him. The scar-faced officer looked at the off-road vehicle and clicked his tongue silently. What the hell happened here? How did it end up like this? Regimental Commander Lee, we will definitely handle this matter seriously. No matter who's behind it, even if they had the guts of a bear or leopard, I will. Seeing the officer remain silent, the squad captain felt his heart sink. This incident had happened during his patrol. If General Xia Yongfeng blamed him. Only then did the scar-faced officer come back to his senses. He looked at the captain and said, "All right, I'll handle it." Huh? The captain was stunned. That's it. Have your men clean this up and withdraw, the scar-faced officer said. Since the scar-faced officer had spoken, the captain didn't dare say more and quickly ordered the soldiers to get to work. The scar-faced officer looked toward the villa. The minibus was parked in the yard. Sigh. The officer gave a bitter smile. In this base city, whoever messed with the Shering squad was really blind. Inside the minibus, Jiang Lushur also saw those soldiers. He also spotted the scar-faced officer looking this way. But the officer didn't approach, which made Jiang Lushur quite satisfied. He had things to do now and didn't want to chat or anything. There were no other residents around this villa, so it was relatively hidden. Sitting in the driver's seat, Jiang Lushur took out a level 2 special mutant blood nucleus from his pocket. Under the sunlight, the red inside the blood nucleus looked like flowing blood. That zombie had lived among people, being controlled. If it hadn't been detected by the starseed, it might have evolved into a terrifying high-intelligence monster. A mutant zombie with just basic intelligence was already extremely powerful. If its intelligence increased further, it would be unimaginable. Click. The starseed panel appeared automatically. At the same time, a small groove popped out beside the dashboard in the base vehicle, its metallic surface flashing coldly. Jiang Lushur looked at the mutant blood nucleus in his hand and placed it in. He had obtained a mutant blood nucleus before, and the starseed had said it could enhance the base vehicle's energy once. He wondered what effect this special blood nucleus would have. As soon as the blood nucleus entered the slot, the metal groove closed automatically. Then, a voice from the starseed sounded in Jiang Lushur's mind. Level 2 Special Mutant Blood Nucleus detected. Level 2 Special Mutant Blood Nucleus can unlock a new base vehicle form. Available form, amphibious, land and water use. Jiang Lushur was stunned upon hearing the starseed's voice. Amphibious? Before the apocalypse, Jiang Lushur had seen a concept vehicle online. That vehicle looked no different from a regular car but could drive on water. If his base vehicle could travel on water, it would become much more versatile. The waters in the apocalypse, rivers, lakes, weren't safe, but when zombies crowded the land, water routes could be a temporary option. However, this wasn't something Jiang Lushur was urgently concerned about, so he wasn't overly excited. What truly surprised him was something else. After inserting the level 2 Special Mutant Blood Nucleus, the energy lab, which had always been locked, now showed a 30% unlocking progress. Originally, Jiang Lushur thought only a level 2 mutant crystal core from a level 2 mutant beast could unlock the energy lab. But level 2 mutant beasts were incredibly rare and hard to kill. Even if someone got a level 2 mutant core, they'd quickly sell it for supplies and weapons. Jiang Lushur never got the chance. So far, he hadn't acquired a level 2 mutant core. He hadn't expected this level 2 special blood nucleus to be a substitute. Even though it was only 30% progress, it was a pleasant surprise. Jiang Lushur was in a great mood. Compared to other base vehicle forms, what he most looked forward to now was the energy lab. This trip to northern Jiangsu had no safe zones, meaning no official military presence. Maybe he could complete the remaining unlocking progress there. Once that happened, evolution crystals could be produced by Jiang Lushur himself. Outside of major bases like Zhonghai Safe Zone, where teams of scientists worked together, no one else could produce evolution crystals on their own. And Jiang Lushur held the key. By then, Zhu Ying's ability can be improved even more, Jiang Lushur thought with satisfaction. Base vehicle windshield damaged, exterior lightly scratched. The starseed's alerts continued. Jiang Lushur glanced outside the window. He'd wait for Star City base to deliver the materials. Actually, his storage space still had a lot of inventory, but since they were heading to northern Jiangsu and the road ahead was full of unknown risks, Jiang Lushi didn't plan to use that stockpile. Early the next morning, a small truck followed by 2 military off-road vehicles arrived at the villa area. So fast? Jiang Lushi looked out from inside the base vehicle. He had slept inside the base vehicle last night. The comfort level inside was no worse than in the villa. He was alone in the vehicle, lying on the bed with the starseed panel open, studying it slowly. So far, the base vehicle had provided him great help. Especially when Jiang Lushi had no personal combat power, the base vehicle was his only survival guarantee. Even now, Jiang Lushi's ability could only be used to its fullest when combined with the base vehicle. The starseed was Jiang Lushi's power. As the zombies and mutant beasts kept evolving, Jiang Lushi also felt a sense of crisis. As for human survivors, the emergence of Fallen City already showed that some survivors, after gaining abilities, started seeking greater power. These people were no less dangerous than the monsters outside. Jiang Lushi had to carefully consider the future direction of the base vehicle's evolution. At this moment, the military vehicles from Star City base had already arrived in front of the villa. Xia Sun stepped out of one of the vehicles but didn't immediately walk up to the villa door. Thinking about facing Jiang Lushi made Xia Sun feel a bit awkward. She didn't know what kind of expression she should wear. She lightly cleared her throat, the corners of her mouth rising into a faint smile. Just then, the minibus door suddenly opened, and Jiang Lushi looked out. "I'm here." Xia Sun's heart skipped a beat. That meant Jiang Lushi had seen her adjusting her expression this whole time. "Are all the materials ready?" Jiang Lushi didn't know why Xia Sun wasn't speaking, so he asked directly. Xia Sun came back to her senses and said, "Yes, everything has been retrieved from the warehouse. One material wasn't enough, so we dismantled some from abandoned buildings." That small truck was fully loaded with supplies for Jiang Lushi. "If it's inconvenient for you to move them, the people I brought can help transport them to wherever you need," Xia Sun added, gradually regaining her composure. "No need." Jiang Lushi glanced at the truck. It had an open-top cargo bed. At that moment, Ying also came out from the house and entered the base vehicle. Xia Sun was still wondering what Jiang Lushi was going to do when she suddenly heard a clack. A metal mechanical arm extended from the minibus. Under the shocked gazes of Xia Sun and the officers, this thing, clearly a minibus, had extended a mechanical arm like a crane and began to move the supplies. Those metal and construction materials were actually quite heavy, but the thin mechanical arm was incredibly nimble. So this is the ability he called car repair? Xia Sun was stunned. She had imagined Jiang Lushi's mechanical modification power as being something related to fixing cars. But what she was seeing now was completely beyond imagination. Jiang Lushi thought to himself, if just seeing a mechanical arm already shocked them, if he used auto-absorption, wouldn't their eyeballs pop out? If Xia Sun hadn't offered to help unload the goods, Jiang Lushi would have just told them to park the truck and used auto-absorption afterward. "By the way, Captain Jiang," Xia Sun said, "about what happened before, my grandfather and I are very grateful to you. So my grandfather has decided to assign a team to travel with you to northern Jiangsu. Their task is to escort you and also scout the situation along the way. You can command them as you wish." Jiang Lushi frowned slightly. No wonder they brought so many vehicles. "Why are you investigating?" Jiang Lushi asked. Although the major safe zones are still connected by broadcast, the areas between safe zones are completely blank. To be honest, recently, there's been a significant increase in the number of mutant zombies and mutant beasts. Xia Sun said seriously, "Captain Jiang, you also know that Zhonghai safe zone was attacked by mutant beasts, and a bug nest was even discovered nearby. In this apocalyptic world, our safe zones are like isolated islands for human survivors. On the surface, they seem safe, but they're surrounded by endless zombies and mutant beasts. It's like throwing a piece of fresh meat into a den of wild beasts. So we also hope to investigate what's going on in other areas," said Xia Sun. After hearing her explanation, Jiang Lushi somewhat agreed. Zhonghai safe zone had been taken by surprise and invaded by mutant beasts. A bug nest was found nearby afterward. Also, Zhonghai safe zone sent a broadcast yesterday. Their attempt to destroy the bug nest resulted in heavy casualties, Xia Sun continued. Jiang Lushi's heart trembled. Heavy casualties. Zhonghai's military only had about 100,000 troops. Any major loss would be a devastating blow. General Zhang was also injured and has returned to the safe zone to recover, Xia Sun added. Injured, Jiang Lushi had great respect for that General Zhang. "Captain Jiang, don't worry. They'll just move together with your vehicle but won't accompany you all the way. We don't plan to explore that far into northern Jiangsu," Xia Sun said. "A larger army would be more likely to encounter danger. Moving with a survivor team like Jiang Liushir's would be much more flexible. If we run into mutant beasts along the way, no matter if they're killed together or by our team, they all belong to Captain Jiang's team. Seeing that Jiang Liushir didn't respond, Xiaosun quickly added. Jiang Liushir glanced at her and gave a short nod. Okay. Have your team gather at the gate tomorrow. We'll depart in the morning, Jiang Liushir said. All the materials were unloaded. He didn't want to talk to this girl any longer and wanted to send her off quickly. Bang! Xiaosun had just taken a step forward when the minibus door slammed shut. Looking at the tightly closed door, Xiaosun really wanted to rush up and bang on it. She hadn't finished talking yet. She had just thought that Jiang Liushir seemed like a good person. What a mistake. They're about the same age, how could he be so cold? All right, he agreed. You'll act together with the Shering squad from now on, Xiaosun said as she walked back and spoke to an officer. Seeing her return to the car, a nearby soldier whispered, "Why does she look so mad? Are you looking to die?" The officer turned his head and scolded in a low voice. As an ability user himself, he had seen the whole thing. Miss Xia really kicked a steel plate this time. The officer had only heard about Jiang Liushir before. Now he had seen him in person. As the rumor said, really arrogant. The base vehicle has been fully repaired. As the starseed notification sounded, the windshield that had been covered with bullet marks was now smooth again. The tires and small damages on the base vehicle's exterior had all been completely repaired. Although it still looked like an ordinary minibus, Jiang Liushir could feel a trace of lifelike energy from the metal shell. V-room. An off-road vehicle drove out from the backyard and stopped next to the minibus. "Brother Jiang, check out this car." Zhang Hai stuck his head out from inside, speaking excitedly. Jiang Liushir rolled down the window and glanced. Nice car. That military vehicle was too big. We weren't used to driving it. We used mutant beast meat to buy this Hummer H2. Before the apocalypse, this car cost over 1,000,000 yuan. The H2 can drive through rivers about 50 centimeters deep, and cross steps or rocks about 40 centimeters high, no problem. Zhang Hai gripped the steering wheel fondly and said, "I've admired it for a long time." Back then, seeing the legendary Hummer H1 able to withstand bullets under 12.77 mm during wartime, it was truly awe-inspiring. But the H2 was a civilian vehicle, not a real battle car. Still, the off-road vehicle had a fierce look. "We also quickly modified it after getting it, reinforced the key parts with steel plates, welded iron bars onto the windows," said Sun Kuan. The two of them were now very skilled at repairing and modifying vehicles. Someone was even willing to sell this car. Jiang Liushir clicked his tongue. "Haha, brother Jiang, not every vehicle is like your minibus. Normal cars have way too high a destruction rate. No matter how cool an H2 is, a mutant beast can still smash it flat. As long as the price is right, of course they're willing to sell," Zhang Hai said. Jiang Liushir nodded. That's right, ordinary vehicles couldn't withstand the impact of mutant beasts and zombie hordes. This made Jiang Liushir even more eager to see what his base vehicle would be like when it evolved further and no longer feared any threat. Of course, that day might still be far off. Maybe the minibus's appearance should be changed, Jiang Liushir suddenly said. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were stunned. They were already very familiar with this minibus's look, and now he wanted to change it. And after all that modification, changing it now would be such a waste. Jiang Liushir didn't explain. It was just a thought. Right now, the space in the vehicle was still too small. If a new form was going to be unlocked, maybe it was time to replace the minibus entirely. But what it should be replaced with, Jiang Liushir hadn't decided yet. At the Star City base gate, 2 military off-road vehicles were already waiting there. The officer from yesterday stood next to the vehicle, looking at the road beyond the gate. Behind him were more than a dozen soldiers. These soldiers were fully armed. The search team usually only operated inside Star City or around its outskirts, but this time they would be leaving the city for a long distance. V-room. With the roar of an engine, the officer turned toward the sound. First, a very flashy modified Hummer H2 appeared in his view. Seeing this flamboyant vehicle, many survivors nearby turned to look. The engine sound alone was very attention-grabbing. Combined with its aggressive appearance, it made nearby survivor teams stare in awe. "Which team is that? This car's awesome." Enjoying the stares and amazement from the crowd, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan felt quite proud. Just then, an even more shocking engine roar came from the road. "Holy sh*T, what kind of car is that? A supercar? Which idiot would drive a supercar in the apocalypse, trying to get killed? That can't be a supercar." In an instant, all the attention that was on the Hummer H2 shifted toward the road. What kind of vehicle could make that kind of engine sound? Zhang Hai looked back and laughed. He was waiting to see how these people would react. Vroom! With a wild engine roar, a minibus appeared in everyone's sight. Seeing the minibus, many people were stunned. As it sped up, they still tried to look behind it. Maybe a real supercar was hidden back there? But behind the minibus, there was nothing but 2 black tire tracks on the road. Vroom! The minibus roared ahead and suddenly braked in front of the 2 military vehicles. From full motion to a dead stop, absolutely smooth. Only then did the survivors snap out of it. What the hell? What kind of car is that? That Hummer H2 was eye-catching, but compared to this minibus, it was nothing. This minibus broke all expectations. As it stopped in front of them and the wind it stirred hit their faces, the officer and his soldiers' expressions changed. That vehicle? The officer at least had some understanding of Jiang Liusher's team and had received strict orders from above. But the soldiers didn't know much about the Shering squad. News about them causing chaos in Fallen City hadn't spread widely yet. In the apocalyptic world, information was blocked, and the military wouldn't go out of their way to announce things. On the contrary, they would act quickly before others could react. Right now, the base city was already mobilizing its forces, but these soldiers weren't included in the main operation. Instead, they were assigned to follow a survivor team. But now, seeing that minibus stop with such an intimidating presence, the soldiers didn't move, but cold sweat broke out on all of them. That vehicle was too fast, they didn't even have time to react. Captain Jiang. The officer stepped forward and saluted. My name is Xiao Feng. By order of General Xia, I will be accompanying the Shering squad and will follow your commands. However, we will be collecting intelligence during the operation, that's our duty. Please understand, Captain Jiang, Xiao Feng said. I understand. Let's head out, Jiang Liusher said, rolling up the window. At this moment, the morning sun was just rising, casting golden light over the abandoned city. This was the time when most survivor teams chose to depart. At the same time, roars from zombies and mutant beasts echoed throughout the city. Tall buildings, crisscrossing streets filled with abandoned cars, smashed shop doors, burn marks, and thick, drifting scent of blood. And all over the streets, dense crowds of zombies, with blood-red eyes. Vroom! On a narrow road, 4 vehicles were driving forward. Bang! Bang! After a few pouncing zombies were taken down, one of the vehicles sped up and moved ahead. Captain Jiang, how about we rest here tonight? It's all rural areas ahead, and we might encounter many large mutant beasts, Xiao Feng said. Jiang Liusher glanced at the tablet. There was still a long distance to northern Jiangsu. For safety reasons, they had taken a detour, avoiding all the large cities. After what happened with Red Moon, Jiang Liusher had gained a new understanding of the evolution of zombies. In those big cities, with populations of millions and no military presence, it was not surprising what kind of monsters might have evolved among those zombies. In this apocalypse, Jiang Liusher felt that being extra cautious was best. There was another important reason for the detour, the mutant beast nest that Ling had mentioned. In the military, such nests were called insect nests because they were densely packed with mutant beasts, like an ant colony. The map only marked this small town with a name. It wasn't a tourist spot, just an ordinary small town, and there wasn't even a detailed map available. After losing internet access, the downloaded maps still had many limitations. They needed to travel a bit further before rejoining the route Ling had taken on her way back. After clearing out some zombies, Jiang Liusher and his group stopped at a hotel at the entrance of the town. As the soldiers entered the hotel, a few zombies pounced out and were shot dead by the soldiers. Xiao Feng led his team and professionally, carefully inspected and cleared the entire area, then dragged the zombie corpses onto a vehicle. Captain Jiang, we've cleaned out a few rooms. 301 and 305 are pretty clean, no one died there, just a bit dusty. Your members can rest there, Xiao Feng came over and said. We'll take those corpses far away and dispose of them. Why? Can't you just dump them nearby? Jiang Zhuing asked, puzzled. They had always done that before, since they never stayed long. A few corpses wouldn't attract too many zombies. Before the apocalypse, the population was large, but only the big cities had high population density. Smaller cities and towns were much safer by comparison. No need to go to such trouble. Recently, broadcasts mentioned that mutant beasts and zombies now have extremely sensitive smell. Although they're still more attracted to the scent of human blood and decay, Xiao Feng explained. We'll take care of the corpses and check for gas stations, supermarkets, just in case there's anything left. We don't know how long this trip will take, and we're not carrying a lot of fuel or food. Then go ahead, Jiang Liusher said. Resources at Star City Base were already scarce, so these soldiers were scavenging supplies along the way. As for Jiang Liusher, he didn't lack gasoline, diesel, or food. And in this kind of small town, even if there was something left, it wouldn't be much. Let's make food first, Jiang Lushi said. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan had already found a gas tank and stove in the house and were preparing to cook. Let's make soup today. Zhang Hai came out easily carrying the gas tank in one hand. Before the food was ready, Ran Xiyu suddenly glanced toward the town and said, "Someone seems to be injured." Her mental field had been spread out as a precaution, she didn't expect something to actually happen. Injured? Jiang Lushi also looked over. Yeah, let me take a closer look. Ran Xiyu paused for 2 seconds, then said in surprise, I feel the number of people has increased. Survivors? I'll go check. Zhang Hai, Sun Kuan, stay here and guard the camp, Jiang Lushi said and boarded the minibus. If it turned out to be a conflict between survivor teams over supplies, Jiang Lushi had no problem taking their stuff. The streets of the small town were fairly empty, and the minibus could drive through with its powerful performance. Some blocking vehicles were directly pushed aside by the minibus. This town looked outdated, like it lagged behind big cities by 10 years. The storefronts felt old-fashioned. Some roadside stalls were still there, but the goods were long rotted, and people were gone. Where is it? Jiang Lushi asked. Turn left at the intersection ahead, Ran Xiyu replied. After turning left, Jiang Lushi saw Xiao Feng's vehicle. They had stopped in front of a grocery store. At the entrance, a few armed soldiers were standing with guns pointed inside. Seeing the minibus arrive, a soldier quickly ran over. What happened? Jiang Lushi asked. Once explained, Jiang Lushi learned that there were more than 10 survivors hiding inside, both men and women. And the first soldier who entered the back room had been suddenly attacked. I can treat him, Li Yusin said. The soldier's bitter expression lit up instantly. You're a doctor? Sort of, Li Yusin nodded. That's great. I'll bring Shaoli over right away, the soldier said excitedly and even saluted. Doctors were scarce in Star City base. Their squad couldn't possibly be assigned a doctor, only medics. But medics could only perform emergency care, and in the apocalypse, even a small wound could lead to various infections. At that point, medics were helpless. No need. I'll go to him, Li Yusin quickly said. Jiang Lushi and Ran Xiyu also got out of the vehicle and followed Li Yusin into the grocery store. The store was quite large, selling a bit of everything. At the entrance were large barrels, maybe for pickles or sauces. There were lots of mops and brooms piled up. In the back were food shelves, mostly empty, but many daily items remained. The injured soldier was leaning against one of the barrels. Another medic was treating his wound. He's badly hurt. Li Yusin's face changed when she saw him. A knife was stuck slantwise in the soldier's neck. If pulled out carelessly, it could cause massive bleeding and death. Where are the survivors? Still resisting inside? Jiang Lushi asked. The medic looked up with an unpleasant expression and said, No. Just then, a voice came from inside. Someone walked out and said, We have children here. They haven't eaten in a long time, so they need nutrition. Then Jiang Lushi saw a large group of survivors come out. Each one emitted an indescribable odor and looked dirty and unkempt. One middle-aged woman tightly held a boy around 10 years old. Seeing this group, Jiang Lushi was stunned. This wasn't the kind of survivors he had imagined. The people were surrounding Xiao Feng. Although Xiao Feng held a gun, facing such a group of people, he couldn't just open fire and could only keep backing away. The middle-aged woman held the child tightly, and the two of them stood at the very front. I already said, we can't take you back to the base city right now. Back off. If you come any closer, I'll really shoot. Xiao Feng pointed his gun at the crowd and shouted a warning. The middle-aged woman flinched, hesitated for a moment, then pinched the child. Wah! The child started crying loudly, instantly drowning out Xiao Feng's voice. Then what are we supposed to do now? The government is supposed to save us, someone in the crowd said. As soon as he said that, many people became emotionally stirred. Yeah. Now you're pointing a gun at us, what do you want? We're already living like this, what mission? What mission is more important than saving people? Jiang Lushi stood at the back, silently watching. These people's reactions were completely in line with how ordinary survivors from isolated areas would behave. Once they found a lifeline, they wouldn't let go. If it went on like this, they would force some kind of compromise. As for their agitation, it clearly showed how they reacted to a sudden glimmer of hope in the middle of their despair. But Jiang Lushi still felt a faint sense of discord while looking at these people. Xiao Feng, after all, was a soldier. Surrounded by women and children, he couldn't even shout them down anymore and was already struggling to keep control. We still have a mission. Seeing this, the remaining survivors also lost their last bit of fear toward the gun and surged forward. Before the apocalypse, some ordinary people already had little respect for the military. Jiang Lushur had once seen a news report. During a large event in Zhonghai, some fans fought with armed police over tickets and even spat on them. When Jiang Lushur saw that report, he felt speechless. Those were teenage girls hitting armed police, and the officers couldn't fight back or even curse back. They dared to attack because they knew the officers couldn't touch them. They acted with impunity. Now, these people were rushing toward Xiao Feng for the same reason. They realized he wouldn't shoot, so they had no fear. Bang! A gunshot rang out, and everyone immediately fell silent. They looked toward the sound and saw a casually dressed young man in his early 20s holding a pistol, the barrel still smoking. The young man stood casually, and beside him was an unbelievably beautiful girl, with a special aura, like a celebrity. Xiao Feng quickly stepped back and stood beside Jiang Lushur, saying, "Captain Jiang, these people are residents of the town. They're demanding we take them back to the safe zone." Jiang Lushur nodded and looked at the group. "Let me ask you something. Which one of you attacked someone?" Everyone froze, looking at each other. The middle-aged woman holding the child gathered her courage and said, "When they first came in, we thought they were zombies, so we acted first." "So it was you?" Jiang Lushur asked, pointing the gun at the woman, making her tremble all over. "It wasn't me, it wasn't." She immediately panicked and scrambled backward. "You all came out here and didn't ask how the injured soldier was, didn't even look at him. I'll ask one more time, who attacked him?" Jiang Lushur asked again. Everyone lowered their heads and said nothing. "You. Step out." Jiang Lushur suddenly looked directly at one of the people. It was a man in his 40s, filthy from head to toe, head lowered. He looked very ordinary. But when Jiang Lushur called him out, a flicker of surprise passed through the man's eyes. Under the eyes of the other survivors, the man slowly stepped forward. "Take a life, pay with your own," Jiang Lushur said, aiming his gun at him. The man looked up in disbelief, and the survivors around also looked shocked. Then, a flash of malice appeared in the man's eyes. A knife suddenly dropped from his sleeve, and he lunged toward Ran Xiyu. As long as he could grab that woman, he could use her to threaten everyone. She was clean and well-groomed, clearly someone important. If he captured her, he could control the others. But as he lunged at her, Ran Xiyu's face showed no panic. She calmly watched him. Mental pierce. Immediately, the man stumbled. Bang! With a scream, the man was shot in the shoulder. His knife clattered to the ground, and he leaned against the wall in pain, twitching all over. "I knew something felt off." Jiang Lushur looked at the group. "Several of you aren't ordinary survivors, are you?" Ran Xiyu had sensed it. Some of these people weren't scared at all. Jiang Lushur guessed they had planned to ambush them, but, seeing they were up against a military team, decided to play smart and pretend to be helpless civilians. They were clearly experienced. They must have done this many times. This town wasn't far from the base city, so other survivor teams probably passed through, and got screwed. Hearing Jiang Lushur expose them, several people looked shocked. In the apocalypse, anything can crawl out, ghosts, monsters, and now this. "And you people actually came up with this kind of plan?" Jiang Lushur shook his head. But before they could react, Jiang Lushur had already opened fire. Even though they were among the crowd, at such close range, it didn't matter, his aim wasn't affected. With the sound of gunshots, people screamed. Warm blood splattered their faces and bodies. Nearby, corpses fell, eyes wide open with bullet holes in their heads. When the shot stopped, everyone was stunned, even Xiao Feng froze. He hadn't expected Jiang Lushur to be so decisive, giving no one a chance to react. At that moment, the remaining survivors finally showed true fear on their faces. "Stop screaming. You're accomplices too," Jiang Lushur said, then looked at the child. "The biggest red flag was you. You're not really a child, are you?" The boy froze, then his face turned pale. He wasn't really a child, he just had a developmental issue. In the post-apocalyptic world, he used his condition to disguise himself as a child, definitely suspicious behavior. But he hadn't expected Jiang Lushur to notice. Most survivor teams, seeing a filthy child, wouldn't even look twice. They'd focus more on the younger women in the group. Those women weren't clean either, but at least they'd washed their faces. Actually, Jiang Lushur hadn't figured it all out by himself, he had Ran Xiyu with him. No matter what these people said, their emotions betrayed them, and helped Jiang Lushur confirm his suspicions. "Now, I'll ask and you answer. You were trying to sneak into our camp, right? Even one night would be enough. You'd make your move at night. But with your numbers, you couldn't pull it off alone. Where are your backup people?" Jiang Lushur asked coldly, staring at the wounded man. He was not only in pain now, his face had gone completely pale with fear. "You. Speak." Knowing they used these people to trap others, and probably had killed many survivors, Jiang Lushur was somewhat curious about them. As for the survivors, they might have been victims, but they had also helped lure and kill others. Jiang Lushi had no misplaced sympathy for them. Sparing their lives was already lenient enough. As soon as the injured middle-aged man saw Jiang Lushi turn around, he shivered violently. Seeing the corpses of those companions, he naturally understood why he was still alive. So, without waiting for Jiang Lushi to say anything, the middle-aged man immediately said, "I'll talk. I'll say everything." Though he was in intense pain, it was still better than getting shot in the head. Xiao Feng watched from the side, shocked and full of lingering fear. Under the pressing of these people, Xiao Feng's head had already been spinning. He had actually been thinking, maybe they could just temporarily settle these people, leave them some food, then come back to bring them to the base city after completing the mission. But if he had really done that, he would have become a criminal. His comrades who had risked their lives together, would have been ambushed by these cannibalistic survivors just after setting out, dying without even having time to send a message. Xiao Feng felt he might have stayed in the safe zone too long and begun thinking that all survivors struggling outside the safety zone were harmless. In an apocalyptic world where morality and law had collapsed, ambushing and killing people was nothing unusual. It was truly thanks to Jiang Lushi being so decisive, pulling the trigger without a shred of hesitation. "Our boss lives just a short way behind here. When he heard the gunshots, he told us to lie in wait for you. At the entrance of this grocery store, we deliberately left a few intact barrels and such, any survivor would come over. The store gets darker near the warehouse area, and once a survivor enters, seeing the warehouse door, that's when we strike. If it's a strong survivor team, or like you guys, the military, we act pitiful to infiltrate, and then kill them at night. The boss sensed only one ability user among you, so he told us to strike directly. He didn't expect you were the military," the injured man said. "The stolen food and supplies are all handed over to the boss for centralized distribution. He also keeps some prisoners," he added. Prisoners. Actually, that wasn't surprising. Doing this kind of thing involved losing people, so they had to replenish numbers somehow. Likely, some weaker captives were kept around to continue doing his dirty work. Even though this was just a small town, they survived by relying on the remaining local resources and by slaughtering passing survivor teams. "We were forced, threatened into doing this," the injured man said. "Bullshit. You're not like us. You're old Zhong's dog. You used to follow him around and bully us all the time. You were the one who attacked those soldiers first." A woman in her 30s suddenly gathered her courage and spoke out. "Mister, when they encounter other survivor groups, most are just regular teams. Strong ones don't usually come to small places like this for supplies. The men, they either kill them or force them to do hard labor. The women, all kept. The pretty ones are all taken by old Zhong for himself. As for women like us, who aren't that good looking, he doesn't even give us food, only a little water to wash our faces, then sends us out to lower the guards of survivors. Old Zhong doesn't touch us, but his dogs torment us every day." The woman trembled all over. It was unclear if it was from fear or anger. "Shut up. Fuck, have you looked at yourself? Filthy and stinking. If there were other women, you think I'd touch you?" the injured man cursed furiously. "Mister, if you had fallen into their trap, the beautiful women around you would definitely have been presented to old Zhong like tribute. That guy is both lecherous and cruel." Jiang Lushi frowned. This really hit his bottom line. But since Zhong was the one who made the first move, Jiang Lushi hadn't planned on letting him go anyway. "Mister, I'll lead the way," the injured man struggled to his feet and said. But suddenly, someone shoved him from behind, and he let out a miserable scream as he fell to the ground, writhing in pain. "Mister, you're right. We're accomplices too. We did it to survive, but we hurt many people. Let us lead the way for you," the child said. Jiang Lushi looked at these people. In their eyes, he saw a flicker of hatred. "All right," Jiang Lushi nodded. Mister. Seeing Jiang Lushi and the others turning to leave, the injured man cried out loudly from the ground. But the child just glanced at him and stepped over him. Soon after, the other survivors, men, women, young and old, stepped over him one after another. At first, he still screamed, but soon his cries grew faint. Jiang Lushi didn't even look back. Just from their eyes, he already knew that man's fate. Even if he still had a breath left, once the smell of blood drew zombies in, his life would be over. The soldier treated by Li Yusin had already stopped bleeding and was moved to the vehicle. Xiao Feng immediately assembled the team. He had nearly made a huge mistake. Now he was eager to destroy the survivors' hideout and drag out that boss. Jiang Lushi and the others returned to the minibus. Ran Shiyu used her mental field to summon Zhang Hai and the others. As the many survivors arrived and saw all the vehicles and weapons outside, they were shocked. They were used to encountering small survivor teams. never imagining such a well-equipped squad would come to a grocery store looking for supplies. Passing through a town like this to do a mission? The next city ahead was still very far. Old Zhong is right at the end of this road. There were many survivors, but they had their own special paths. There weren't many zombies around, and most of the spots where zombies could crawl through had been sealed off. Other vehicles passed through easily, but the minibus felt crowded in such a narrow alley. But with Ying's precise driving and careful calculations, even such alleys could be squeezed through. Jiang Zhuiying looked out the window and felt the glass was almost scraping the wall. Although the starseed could give distance and angle corrections, Jiang Lusher felt that even if he drove it himself, while he could make it, he wouldn't be nearly as fast. Ying was managing it all without even slowing down. This was where the advantage of the base vehicle's AI manager showed. Ying, as a life form created by the starseed, could perfectly execute its data instructions. All the soldiers and survivors, who should have been focused on what lay ahead, were instead shocked by the minibus's godlike driving, unable to take their eyes off it. Only Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, following behind in the off-road vehicle, remained calm. It's just driving. No big deal. After all, they had already seen much crazier things. That there is old Zhong's lair. The survivors pointed to a place. It appeared to be a small factory or something. The sign had been removed. Outside were brick walls, with lime peeling in many places revealing red bricks. Above the wall, some wire and glass had been arranged into a protective net. Inside, it looked very large. Many cargo trucks were parked, like a parking lot. On each side of the gate were two very old houses. Even the windows were the wooden grid glass type. This place is actually outside the town proper, somewhat safer. Old Zhong has had us working in there every day, building up his residence very solidly. One survivor said. And he's got many firearms from our robberies, and we've formed a team around him. When they arrived at the factory, some of the survivors became afraid, remembering old Zhong's strength. Isn't there a saying, easy to defend, hard to attack? Seeing their hesitation, Jiang Zhuiying opened the window, scanned them with a look of mocking disdain, and said, such a good opportunity and you're not taking it? First make this clear, we are not here to save you. If you're afraid, you can leave right now. Jiang Zhuiying spoke bluntly. The survivors exchanged uneasy glances. At that moment, before they could react, the minibus had already driven toward the factory. This? We're going straight in? Isn't that making ourselves targets? One survivor exclaimed. Xiao Feng sneered and said, and you think your old Zhong is some big deal? On this tiny town, however much you robbed, can you have as many guns as the guys from Fallen City? Captain Jiang, wouldn't he just rush out anyway? Fallen City? These people had never heard of it. Their knowledge of the outside was only the base city, and even that came from survivors captured by old Zhong. Let's follow. Xiao Feng shouted to his men. Actually they had only heard that Jiang Lusher burst out of Fallen City, but had not seen it themselves. These soldiers, including Xiao Feng, wanted to see whether Jiang Liusher's team was really as powerful. Of course they wouldn't just watch, they would follow and cover as well. Meanwhile, inside the plant, a lookout survivor had already seen the incoming vehicles. He froze for a moment then yelled downstairs, "Boss! Someone's coming!" In the middle of the factory yard was a large open space. Equipment had been moved by old Zhong's orders. In the center stood several tables stacked with food, and a mahjong table. At one of the mahjong tables sat a group of men and women. One burly man had two scantily clad women on each side, cleaner dressed than the female workers outside. One of the women was in his arms, and he pinched her from time to time. The woman, though she frowned, dared not say a word and forced a smile. People? What people? The muscular man was old Zhong himself. He was playing cards. Hearing his subordinate, he did not immediately process it. If someone's coming, bring the people down. Weren't those idiots supposed to be ambushing? While old Zhong spoke, his subordinate looked again and saw the minibus in front of the reinforced gate, no sign of slowing. Boss, I reckon it's that group. They're barging in, the subordinate yelled. Before he finished speaking a huge boom sounded. Ah? The women shrieked. Old Zhong froze, his mahjong tiles crushed in his fist. He grabbed the gun from the side and shouted, damn, a pack of wastes. They better be dead already, or when I get back I'll make them suffer worse than death. I want to see who's so stupid they come to my door. Old Zhong ruled this small town with a single hand, the lives of these survivors were in his control. Anyone daring to resist him had been made an example. As for someone hitting his door, it had never happened before. He only ever led his people to trap survivors and listen to their screams. Those hesitant survivors were rooted to the spot as the minibus rammed the metal gate and drove toward the factory. They watched, mouths agape. When old Zhong stormed upstairs with men, peering out a window, his fury and intent to kill surged, but then a flicker of reason cut through. 4 vehicles. And many soldiers. So many people. Their guns wouldn't be few. Compared with these soldiers, old Zhong's men weren't even militia, just rough amateurs. Guns. Just thinking about so many fully armed people made old Zhong both fearful and envious. He had always strictly controlled weapons, only in trusted hands. Even trusted hands had their bullets strictly controlled. Seeing his men panic, old Zhong roared, "Don't be afraid. They'll negotiate with us first. Delay them, then think." This factory had already been heavily fortified, designed to defend against zombies and mutant beasts, and good enough to block survivors too. "We're inside. Easy to defend, hard to attack. What are you afraid of?" Old Zhong shouted. His men thought he was right and calmed somewhat. But at that moment, one of the minibuses suddenly roared its engine and barreled toward the factory gate. At the front of the minibus the ram glowed with metallic light, cold and terrifying. These people, even the white brothers he once met on the black market, weren't like this. Jiang Lushur wouldn't waste time with old Zhong. Boom! With a massive crash, the giant steel-reinforced gate collapsed. Just as the factory door had been meant to be tough. Seeing the minibus burst through, the women and survivors inside screamed. Watching this, old Zhong's mind went blank. He saw the military vehicles following behind. His men were even weaker, rubber-legged with fear. They had never seen a scene like this. "Boss, let's run." A subordinate's voice quivered. They could no longer defend the factory. Now the only option was to flee. Old Zhong glared at him red-eyed. If he had more men now, he would have shot this guy himself. All this business he'd built with sweat. A safe residence, stored food and weapons, his men, and women. If they ran away, all that would be taken by these people. Old Zhong now bitterly regretted not killing his 2 women right away, then they'd never have gone to others to play with. "Why don't we burn this place?" He thought of that vicious plan, but then rejected it. "No. I still have so many supplies. The survivors and his women could die, whatever. But his supplies, he raided and collected from the town many times to get these. But letting it all go like this, he couldn't accept it. What to do? Let's lure the zombies here." Old Zhong suddenly thought of a good idea. Normally he wouldn't waste bullets on zombies, so he avoided them. And he had some crude methods to draw them away. If you can lead them away, you can also draw them in. After the zombies finish these people, he'd lead the zombies away, then what's left is his supplies. Those people would be eaten by zombies, and he'd get the cars, the guns. As for his women and the survivors being eaten, old Zhong didn't care at all. Compared with the guns, what were they? "Go fetch the zombie draw device. And open the gate too," old Zhong whispered. On the 2nd and 1st floors he had escape routes. The factory had long been modified several times by him. Before the others came up, he decided to strike immediately, lest something go wrong. Old Zhong's initial anger and fear were gone now. He felt only excitement. He'd robbed many survivor teams before, but never gotten this much loot. When he got these supplies, he might go to a small city and build a bigger force. As for Star City Base, he was clear. He already got some info from prisoners. Just now one small military squad nearly made him think he had to flee. If your guns are strong, but you're trapped here by zombies, you'll die anyway. The minibus drove straight into the factory building. At first, Jiang Lushur raised his gun, but then realized that, aside from a few women sitting on the ground shivering, there were also some injured survivors huddled in the corners. Jiang Lushur glanced around but didn't see any sign of Boss Zhong. Xiao Feng also drove in. When he saw the iron gate lying on the ground, he and the other soldiers around him all twitched their eyelids. That iron gate was quite sturdy. Even a horde of zombies probably wouldn't be able to break through it. Yet, this minibus just crashed through it. The minibus was completely intact, and the ramming spike on its front, glinting coldly, looked ferocious and horrifying. While the soldiers were on alert, Xiao Feng led a few men cautiously toward the shivering women. "Where is Boss Zhong?" Xiao Feng asked. The woman looked at him in terror, clearly scared out of her mind. Xiao Feng frowned and was about to ask again when Jiang Lushur said, "No need to ask. He's upstairs." The factory wasn't that big. When Ran Shiyu came in, she had already scanned the inside. When she didn't see Boss Zhong and his men, she looked up and found there was a 2nd floor. The 2nd floor only covered part of the space. Much of it was just walkways and such. It was probably built for equipment maintenance or to perform certain operations. Ran Shiyu immediately scanned the 2nd floor and reported the result to Jiang Lushur. The group of women looked at the young man on the minibus in disbelief after hearing what Jiang Lushur said. Seeing their reactions, Xiao Feng also realized it must be true. "Captain Jiang, let me go up and get him." Xiao Feng, still holding a grudge, immediately raised his gun and said. Xiao Feng was also an elite soldier and an ability user. His men weren't weak either. Today, they were caught off guard, nearly lost a comrade, and had to rely on Jiang Lushi to clean up the mess. Both he and his men were holding in their frustration. Better not, Jiang Lushi said after a moment of silence. Xiao Feng was stunned and asked anxiously, why? The survivors are running this way. Behind them, there are zombies, a lot of them. Ran Shiyu added. Xiao Feng immediately ran to the gate to look outside. The survivors were running toward them, one after another. Their faces were pale, full of fear. But they all knew that screaming wouldn't help and would only attract more zombies, so they kept their mouths shut. When they saw the gate had been crashed open by Jiang Lushi, they were all shocked. So tough. Someone remembered the suffering under Boss Zhong and couldn't help saying they wanted to go help. The others were clearly moved too. But at that moment, they suddenly saw zombies. They knew where the zombies usually gathered and would usually avoid those areas and not make loud noises. Even if the noise just now had drawn the zombies out, they should have gathered near the grocery store, not come here so quickly. But either way, when they saw more than a dozen zombies suddenly pounce out, the survivors were terrified. Run. And behind them, more and more zombies were appearing. Please, we'll help fight the zombies. The survivors begged as they reached the factory. Xiao Feng hesitated. These people didn't deserve sympathy, but to leave them outside to be slaughtered by zombies, he couldn't bring himself to do it. And if that many people were killed, it would attract an even larger zombie wave. Some might survive and become mutated zombies. Let them in, Jiang Lushi said, already stepping off the minibus. Yes, Captain Jiang. Xiao Feng replied. The people rushed into the factory, and Jiang Lushi pointed to some makeshift weapons inside, kitchen knives, hoes, shovels, and said to them, pick up weapons. Guard the doors and some windows. If you can't hold them. I know. A man nervously stepped forward, grabbed a shovel, his whole body trembling. He didn't know if it was fear or something else. Looking at Jiang Lushi, he shouted, then we die. Then he turned to his companions and shouted, do you want to die? They froze, then all rushed toward the weapons. One woman grabbed a stick, looked at the trembling women still huddled together, ran over, and shouted, you get up too. Haven't you had enough of being used as toys? No one's going to protect you, get up and fight. The women turned pale with fear, but under the fierce stare and threat, they struggled to their feet, picked up weapons, and stood trembling beside the gate with the survivors. The gate was large enough for big machinery to pass through. Standing side by side, over a dozen people could fit. Before the apocalypse, such a gate was convenient. But now, with the gate gone, they could only watch as the zombies charged straight at them. There were hundreds of zombies, with more still coming. The zombies ran at full speed, their eyes blood-red, faces twisted. Seeing humans made them wildly excited, like they were on drugs. The humans could feel how badly the zombies wanted to tear into them, to bite them apart. For many, the fear of zombies was almost instinctive. Xiao Feng, block the zombies. Zhang Hai, you guys stay and help. Ing, stay and drive the minibus. Ran Shiyu and Li Yusen stay too. As Jiang Lushi spoke, he picked up two Type 54 pistols, his eyes flashing with cold light. I'm going to drag that Zhong guy down. These zombies didn't just appear out of nowhere. Turns out Zhong had some tricks, using zombies like this. Brother Jiang, he's moving to the right from the left side. There might be an exit over there, Ran Shiyu said. Got it. Jiang Lushi immediately ran upstairs. His enhanced body and activated mutated bloodline made him much faster and more agile. Jiang Zhuiying and Zero followed close behind. At that moment, Boss Zhong was looking out the window. Seeing the zombies swarming in, he grinned twistedly. Good. Good. Let's see how they escape now. Just wait to be eaten. Then he heard footsteps on the stairs. So fast? Those bitches betrayed me. Boss Zhong spat and waved to his men, let's go. Boss Zhong had modified the factory long ago and had left himself a way to escape. Those people would be eaten alive, while he would be completely fine. At that moment, Jiang Lushi and the others quickly reached the second floor. This place, Jiang Lushi frowned as soon as he stepped onto the second floor. The floor was covered with an iron plate, and its original color could no longer be seen. Bits of flesh and blood were still stuck in the gaps. Dirty bedding could be seen everywhere. Jiang Lushi guessed that this was where the survivors usually lived. Boss Zhong had remodeled the first floor of the factory into a small room with a bed and furniture. As for the survivors, he thought they were filthy and smelly, so he had driven them to live upstairs or in the small outer buildings. What a strong smell, Zero said. From the already mixed odors, she caught a particularly thick one and quickly covered her nose. Over there. Zero's ability was to mutate into a leopard cat. Her sense of smell, hearing, and sight were all far stronger than those of ordinary ability users. She slightly bent her body and swiftly ran toward the source of the smell. Soon she found that inside a control room connected to the outside, countless mangled limbs ground up by machines, along with the stench they produced, were being sprayed out through a pipe. These were the mixed corpses of zombies and humans, mostly decomposing, and the smell was overwhelming. Such a strong odor being constantly sprayed out was like the scent of fresh meat to hungry animals. It drove the zombies crazy. Moreover, Boss Zhong must have used some method to make the smell stronger and spread faster. Otherwise, the zombies wouldn't have reached this place so quickly. They couldn't have created those body parts in such a short time. So many mutilated limbs could only mean one thing: they kept them ready in advance. As a fellow survivor, Zero immediately understood what had happened. The survivors that Boss Zhong killed, or those who died from abuse, even their corpses weren't spared. As for the zombie corpses, he must have hunted those on purpose. Just the survivors' bodies wouldn't have been enough. Even Zero, who had seen countless bloody scenes in the arena, felt sick looking at this. "Captain Jiang, you don't need to come over," Zero said. But as she spoke, Jiang Zhuiying still walked forward. When she saw the scene, her face also changed. Jiang Zhuiying frowned deeply, gripped her long knife, and said, "Let me handle this. These bodies are left here exposed and used as his tools, better to burn them clean." She raised her other hand and spread her fingers slightly. Instantly, white lightning flashed across her body, skin, and eyes. The electricity gathered in her palm and then turned into a bolt of lightning that struck the piles of horrific remains. Zzzt. The sound of electricity startled Boss Zhong and his men. What a strong energy wave! Boss Zhong was shocked. Against such an ability user, he had no chance to fight back. But the thought that someone this powerful would still die by his hand gave him a twisted sense of pleasure. At that moment, his underling was trying to open the door. "Why haven't you opened it yet?" Boss Zhong shouted angrily. The underling was panicking. Seeing the minibus crash in, the soldiers behind it, and now the flood of zombies, his body was drenched in cold sweat. Under Boss Zhong's yelling, he finally managed to open the door. Boss Zhong immediately shoved him aside and crawled out the door. Outside the door was a welded ladder. Climbing down led to the back of the factory, completely hidden from the zombies' sight. As long as he hid for a while and then made some noise to lure the zombies away, everything would go perfectly. Boss Zhong thought his plan was flawless. "Hurry up!" he urged his men. If he didn't need them, he would have locked them inside long ago. Then, Boss Zhong saw figures appear in the corridor. Bang! 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 He fired several shots immediately. "Boss! Let me through," one underling shouted. He hadn't made it inside yet. He turned his head and saw someone there, but Boss Zhong didn't hesitate and fired. The deafening gunfire and the sound of bullets hitting metal and walls made the underling tremble all over. Boss Zhong glanced at him and slammed the door shut. With such powerful ability users around, he didn't want to waste even a second. Besides, it was just a small fry, why risk his life for him? A bug like that, dead or not, who cared? The door had a heavy padlock, like a chunk of iron, and also a bolt. Breaking through it would be difficult. That iron door would at least delay them a bit. By the time they got it open, he would have escaped through the factory's back door. "Ah! Boss! Don't!" the underling screamed, pounding on the door with all his strength, but he couldn't match Boss Zhong's power. Boss Zhong quickly locked the door, laughed, and shouted, "Go!" The other underlings, seeing this, were both fearful and relieved. But since it wasn't them who died, one less person meant more loot for them. Thinking of all the supplies and weapons they could get, the men grew eager and excited as they escaped. "Boss! Boss!" the abandoned underling screamed desperately. Then he turned and saw Jiang Lushir and the others watching him. "They already ran, it's got nothing to do with me," he begged. "I'll handle him," Zero said, walking slowly toward him. The man knew he was doomed. He roared and raised his gun. If he was going to die, he'd drag one with him. "You look pretty, dying with me isn't a bad deal," he sneered, his face twisting. But Zero suddenly sped up, her body turning into a blur. In an instant, she appeared before him, jammed her fingers into his gun's trigger guard, and slashed his neck with the other hand. She didn't use a knife, but her nails were sharp as blades. The man's eyes bulged, his body slowly kneeling down. As he made choking sounds, blood spurted wildly from his throat. Zero said coldly, "You? Worthy? Brother, I'll open the door," Jiang Zhuiying said, holding her knife. "No need. They'll head for the back door," Jiang Lushir said, turning to go downstairs. Downstairs, the soldiers and survivors were already fighting the mad zombies. The military vehicles blocked the entrance like walls, while the zombies kept crashing into the gate. Gunfire rattled nonstop, zombies falling one after another. If even one zombie reaches the front of the car, the others will climb over. Don't let them near. Xiao Feng shouted. The survivors on the side piled up objects as makeshift walls. At first, only a few dared to stand in front. The others cowered behind them. They had fought zombies before, but never so many at once. But as the zombies came close, the sheer terror of death made them forget their fear for a moment. Ah, they screamed, swinging whatever weapons they had at the approaching zombies. Some zombies were less than a meter away. Their wide eyes, outstretched arms, and ferocious attacks were terrifying. Even so, the survivors held the line. Soon, several zombie bodies lay before them, creating a barrier. We can kill zombies too. We can live by our own strength. Kill. Don't be afraid. If you're afraid, you'll die, one survivor shouted hysterically, slamming his shovel into a zombie's face. Blood spurted like a fountain, and the man, almost insane, struck again and again until the zombie fell. The zombies kept coming. For every corpse that fell, several more lunged forward. Then Xiao Feng, who had much combat experience, noticed a problem. There were too many zombie corpses. The ones behind climbed over their fallen kind and pounced from above. Attracted by so many living humans, the zombies didn't even stop to eat their own kind. Their blood-red eyes were fixed on the people hiding behind. Hold on. When Captain Jiang comes down, with Miss Jiang Zhuing's electric power and that thing on the bus, Xiao Feng didn't even know what to call the flying saucer-like device, but with it, the minibus was like a moving fortress, a ready-made stronghold. Combined with Jiang Liusher's precise shooting, they could ease the zombies' pressure. Just then, a beep sounded from the minibus behind him. Xiao Feng fired a few more shots, turned his head, and shouted, "Captain Jiang." He saw Jiang Liusher coming down from upstairs and entering the minibus. Hope flickered in Xiao Feng's eyes. But then, the minibus suddenly turned, its front facing the zombies outside, and started moving forward. "Captain Xiao, have the soldiers move the vehicle aside," Jiang Liusher said calmly through the window. His tone was calm, which made Xiao Feng doubt his ears. "Captain Jiang, what are you doing?" he asked. "I'm going out," Jiang Liusher said. Outside were hundreds, maybe thousands of zombies, and piles of corpses blocking the gate. Go out? Both the soldiers and survivors were shocked. Crossing a street with some zombies was one thing, but facing thousands at the door was entirely different. They were packed so tightly together, with immense force. Only overwhelming firepower could hold them back. Charging into them meant entering the jaws of death. Surrounded by so many zombies, a car could be torn apart in seconds. The zombies' strength and sharp claws were monstrous. Xiao Feng knew the bus's defenses were strong, but even if the glass didn't shatter and the body wasn't torn open, sheer force could flip it. Seeing Xiao Feng's expression, Jiang Liusher added, "Also, this entrance needs clearing." Xiao Feng's heart skipped. Remembering Jiang Liusher's strength, he decided to obey. Moving the car aside was temporary anyway. Even if Jiang only charged out briefly, it wouldn't be a huge loss. Jiang was a powerful survivor, he knew what he was doing. Most importantly, as a soldier, obedience was his duty. Before leaving, General Xia had personally ordered him to follow Jiang Liusher's commands. "Cover Captain Jiang." Xiao Feng shouted to his men. "Move the car." Two soldiers jumped into the military vehicle and backed it away. The others increased their gunfire, holding the zombies several meters from the gate. "Drive," Jiang Liusher said to Ing as he looked toward the entrance. Boom! Ing slammed the accelerator down. Thousands of zombies gathered at the entrance of the factory, stretching out their long arms, desperately trying to grab the humans not far away. At this moment, the minibus roared to life, its tires screeching sharply against the rusty iron floor, and suddenly charged out through the gate. Boom! As the minibus drove over the fallen gate, the vehicle trembled slightly, then crashed straight into the zombies. Bang! 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 The sound of the vehicle colliding with bodies echoed, and the zombies were knocked flying. The tightly packed horde was split open like being smashed apart by a heavy hammer. A large amount of blood splashed onto the minibus windshield instantly. Creak creak! The sounds of pressure and impact came from outside the minibus, with all the windows being violently pounded, and zombies cramming around the door. Li Yusen, who had just finished treating the injured soldier and returned to the minibus to rest, sat on the sofa. The zombies' faces pressed against the glass, less than 10 centimeters away from her. She couldn't help but tense up. At this moment, Ran Shiyu beside her reached out and held her hand. "Thank you." Li Yusen's face was still pale. This kind of fear was hard to control. Zero tightly gripped the door handle, staring at the crowd of zombies outside the door. These zombies were male, female, old, and young. But no matter what they had been before mutating, they were all now the same monsters. They pressed hard against the doors, their sharp nails constantly scratching at them. The door made a strained creaking sound, as if it would burst open at any moment. If this were a regular vehicle, it would have already been destroyed. At this moment, Jiang Lusher said, "Ram through." Buzz. From the exhaust pipe of the minibus, flames suddenly burst out. Boom boom boom. Inside the zombie horde, the minibus didn't slow down, instead, it accelerated. This power is terrifying," a soldier couldn't help exclaiming, his eyes wide as he watched the minibus push forward through the zombie crowd. In the army, he had driven military vehicles, done repairs and modifications, and was even an enthusiast. He knew a fair bit about vehicles. But this minibus was the most powerful he had ever seen. No wonder Jiang Lusher and his team were so confident. They knew the gate was swarming with zombies, yet they dared to charge out. The zombies hit by the minibus were thrown to the ground, some even crushed under its wheels. The scene of blood and flesh flying, and the sound like a meat grinder, made everyone feel like they were watching a 3D action movie. It felt like special effects, almost impossible to believe it was real. The survivors especially felt this way. They had faced the zombies in terror, only summoning the courage to fight back at the edge of life and death. But the people on this minibus had driven straight into the zombie horde. But the zombie crowd was like a swamp. The longer they stayed in, the more zombies surrounded them. Many zombies had already climbed onto the roof. More and more came, quickly covering the entire minibus. Zombies were incredibly fast. They overwhelmed the vehicle in the blink of an eye. Many people couldn't even react before being torn apart by zombies. Inside the minibus, even as the light began to disappear and all they could see were zombies, Jiang Lusher remained calm. "Ing, charge the air cannon." Ing immediately reached out and pressed a button. The air cannon needed 10 seconds to charge, though it could be fired early with reduced power. But for dealing with zombies, it was still enough. In the middle of this zombie swarm, surrounded in all directions, the air cannon didn't even need to aim. Boom! With a loud bang, the zombies in front of the minibus were blasted away by an invisible force, suddenly clearing a wide path. The bodies of the zombies, like blood-filled bags, were torn apart. The ones pressed against the front of the minibus were completely turned into pulp, as if smashed repeatedly by some machine. Under the impact of the air cannon, the minibus shook backward slightly. But since the charge time was short, its windshield and outer shell could fully withstand the force. Instead, the jolt made the zombies on the roof lose their balance, and those behind the minibus were also pushed back. What was that just now? The survivors heard the loud explosion and saw the zombies thrown into the air, completely stunned. Xiao Feng and the others also felt a jolt in their hearts. Such terrifying firepower. Who knew how many more hidden features this minibus had? We didn't even need to cover them. Xiao Feng thought to himself. It looked like the minibus could break through the horde. Unfortunately, there was only one minibus. The rest of them still had to face the zombies. But then, the minibus suddenly turned on the spot. "What's it doing?" a survivor asked, not understanding. Its goal was to break out. Now that it had the chance, why turn back? Buzz. The minibus roared again, then shot toward the factory gate like an arrow. The zombies blocking the way were smashed aside by the terrifying vehicle. Their strong bodies and combat power meant nothing against this iron monster. Boom boom boom. Everyone stared wide-eyed as the minibus plowed forward again and returned to the gate. Bang! Several zombies were flung in front of the crowd, and the minibus stopped a short distance away. Gulp! Someone swallowed hard. Everyone stared at the minibus, their jaws about to drop. All of them together had only been able to passively hold back the zombies with firepower. But this minibus had gone into the zombie horde, made a round trip, and came back. Damn, if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't believe it. Jiang Lusher glanced at the surrounding zombie horde. Seeing they were closing in again, he said, now their pressure should be reduced a lot. It's time for us to go after that boss Zhong. Shiyu. Ran Shiyu had kept her mental field active. She immediately replied, he already went out the back door. Is there a suitable route? Jiang Lusher asked. No. It's full of zombies outside. Ran Shiyu shook her head. The fastest path was the one boss Zhong had taken. No problem, Jiang Lusher smiled slightly. He can't escape. Climbing down the ladder, boss Zhong ran quickly to an off-road vehicle parked behind the factory. He yanked open the door and jumped in. He started the engine impatiently before his underlings even got in. Boss. Wait for us. These lackeys were nowhere near as fast as boss Zhong. When they saw the SUV start up, they were instantly terrified, afraid they'd end up like the one locked behind the door. Damn it. What the hell are you yelling for? Get the hell in. And two of you, go open the gate. Boss Zhong cursed angrily. These underlings were all from the small town before. They were only fears toward defenseless survivors. When real trouble came, they all tucked their tails and hid. Useless trash. If he didn't need them for errands or as cannon fodder, Boss Zhong would have let them all die here already. The lackeys scrambled into the vehicle. 2 of them ran clumsily to open the back gate. Boss Zhong had an excited smile on his face and slammed his foot on the gas. Ha ha ha. Go di. Boss Zhong couldn't hide the joy on his face. Hearing the gunfire behind him made him feel great. Damn it, what are you still fighting for? The longer you fight, the more zombies come. You'll all die anyway, so save me some bullets. Boss Zhong already considered the guns and ammo as his own. Just then, a loud explosion rang out. Everyone in the car, including the lackeys, was startled. One of the lackeys swallowed and asked, "Was that a bomb?" Shit. Boss Zhong punched the steering wheel hard. A bomb. These soldiers even used explosives. This town was remote, and the people they usually robbed were just weak survivor teams. Having 2 or 3 guns was already rare. Thinking of them using bombs made Boss Zhong's heart ache. Whatever, compared to what I'll gain, this little loss is nothing. Judging by the gunfire, they've got a lot of weapons. But then, a lackey who had turned to look at the factory suddenly spoke in a strange tone, "B-boss." What now? Boss Zhong hated being interrupted. Normally, no lackey dared cut him off when he spoke. Especially now, when he was feeling so proud. But he didn't need the lackey to say anything. Buzz. A harsh engine roar came from the distance, and it was getting closer. Boss Zhong looked into the rearview mirror in disbelief, and saw a minibus charging out from behind them. This minibus was covered in blood and chunks of flesh. A zombie was stuck under its wheels and then thrown out violently. Seeing this, the lackeys were stunned, and Boss Zhong's heart skipped a beat. What the hell? How did that minibus catch up? Did it come out from the zombie horde? Boss Zhong wanted to curse out loud. How was that even possible? Buzz. Boss, that thing's fast. The lackeys started to panic. It didn't matter how the vehicle got there, just knowing it came out of the zombies scared the hell out of them. They were in a vehicle too, but with just some tin and flesh, compared to that minibus which had charged through the zombies, they were nothing. Killing them would be like squashing bugs. Panic for what? Shoot it. They can't catch up to us. Boss Zhong shouted. These guys were nothing but thugs. Sure, they bullied weak survivors and killed without blinking during sneak attacks, but against real opponents, they were cowards. Yeah. Shoot the tires. The lackey snapped out of it and quickly opened the windows and sunroof. I'll shoot the driver. One of the smarter lackeys, who also had decent aim, climbed out through the sunroof with his gun. He saw the driver in the minibus. It was just a woman. He couldn't possibly lose to a woman, right? But, such a beautiful woman, he'd only ever seen that kind in movies. In real life, he never even got near anyone like her. What a shame to kill such a cold, stunning beauty. Bang! The moment the lackey stuck his head out, a gunshot rang out. His body jolted violently. Warm blood and brain matter splattered inside the car. Shit! Shit! The other lackeys were terrified. They stared at the corpse stuck in place, its head blown open by a single shot. Who still dared to stick their head out? He had only just poked out the top of his head, and it was instantly blown off. Damn it! Boss Zhong was also shocked. The enemy's aim was terrifying. Was the minibus full of soldiers? Special forces? Compared to those guys, they were just thugs, no match at all. Just then, Boss Zhong felt a strong sense of life or death danger. Ah? He turned the wheel hard and saw a flash of sparks behind the car. A bullet had grazed him. Boss Zhong went cold all over. If not for the danger sense that came with his abilities, he'd be dead. Damn. Come on then. In desperation, Boss Zhong yanked the steering wheel and sped into a side street. He was a local boss and knew the roads way better than the minibus did. Also, the minibus had made it out, but gunfire was still coming from the factory. Would they really chase him non-stop and ignore everyone else? Boss Zhong figured they wouldn't chase for long. He'd find a place to hide. Maybe later at night, he could play another dirty trick. Since most of the zombies had been lured to the factory, his car sped down the road with little resistance. Since the apocalypse, he had always traveled cautiously, never like this. Seeing the open road made him even more fearless. Fuck it, come chase me. Let's see how far you can follow. Boss Zhong floored the gas. A few lingering zombies tried to jump on the road, but he ran them over. The sight of flesh and blood smashing into the car thrilled him. Come on. Come on. Then, in the middle of his madness, Boss Zhong suddenly heard an inappropriate sound. Beep! Boss Zhong's heart clenched. He looked into the rearview mirror. Damn it, that minibus is honking at me. Beep! 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 The horn blared again and again, echoing down the entire street. To Boss Zhong, it sounded just like a death knell. Some zombies, originally drawn to the blood scent, gunfire, and explosions from the direction of the factory, stopped their wild running when they heard the sharp horn and turned to look. Grr. Boss Zhong could already hear the zombies' growls. A large group of zombies suddenly charged out from a narrow alley. Boss Zhong's pupils contracted as he sped past them. Bang! Several zombies crashed into the side of the SUV as it brushed past. Their hideous faces were pressed against the windows, face to face with the crammed-in lackeys inside, scaring one of them into letting out a scream. Boss Zhong gripped the steering wheel tightly. If it weren't for his excellent driving skills and the modified vehicle, that crash just now would have caused the SUV to lose control and slam into a wall. If that happened, they wouldn't even need the minibus crew to act. The zombies would have dragged them out and torn them to pieces. "Boss, that car's getting closer," a lackey said in panic. Boss Zhong could hear it too, the horn was getting louder. Looking in the rearview mirror, he saw that the distance between the minibus and them had already been cut in half. The zombies weren't even slowing the minibus down. It sped forward smoothly, and any zombies it hit instantly exploded into a bloody mist, thrown away like rag dolls. Boss Zhong felt a chill on his scalp. He floored the accelerator, feeling like the engine might explode. But the minibus was still right behind him, getting even closer. At this rate, they'd be caught sooner or later. Then, that intense sense of danger struck again. Boss Zhong jerked the steering wheel suddenly. Bang! The lackeys inside grabbed onto anything they could to steady themselves, their hearts pounding with every jolt, their faces pale. Beep! 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 Boss Zhong was about to go crazy. That minibus had locked onto him like death itself. And the blaring horn and gunshots were going to draw even more zombies over. The pressure on the factory would be greatly reduced, making the minibus crew even more free to pursue him without worry. Boss Zhong realized that all his plans were falling apart, one by one. His excitement quickly turned into cold dread. If his plan really failed, he'd lose everything, his camp, his supplies, even his life. And all of this was just because of a minibus that had arrived today. Watching the minibus close in, sweat poured from Boss Zhong's forehead. He didn't want to die. Gritting his teeth, he let out a loud yell, punched the side window, and forcibly tore off a steel rod. Before the others could react, the SUV suddenly swerved and turned to face the minibus. The door flew open, and Boss Zhong jumped out, landing behind an abandoned car. Inside the SUV, the gas pedal had been jammed down with the steel rod. The whole vehicle now charged at full speed toward the also speeding minibus. The lackeys inside felt their hearts stop. The crash was going to happen in seconds, they had no time to react. Let's see how you dodge this. Boss Zhong, after escaping death, crouched behind the wrecked car, a twisted, savage smile on his face. At such high speed, the SUV would definitely be smashed to pieces. The minibus's front half might be destroyed too. No way anyone inside could survive that. Compared to his lackeys, Boss Zhong's own life was more important. As long as he was alive, he could rise again. In the apocalypse, what he feared most was weakness and death. Seeing the SUV suddenly turn around and rapidly grow larger in front of the minibus, Zero's face changed. Jiang Zhuiying and Ran Xiyu also felt their hearts tighten. At that moment, the human brain could barely react in time, let alone react correctly. But Ying, who was driving the minibus, remained calm. Her eyes didn't blink, and at the last fraction of a second before the vehicles collided, she yanked the wheel hard, making the minibus drift to the side. Simply dodging wouldn't have worked. But during the drift, the minibus passed so closely alongside the SUV that it was like a dance move between them. A perfect drift. A 100% dodge. Boom! The SUV crashed into a nearby shop, almost tearing through the whole building. Then came a massive explosion, followed by fire and thick black smoke. On the minibus, Zero and the others still couldn't believe it. They had all instinctively held their breath from tension, and in just that brief moment, it was all over. Zero had never been involved with racing before. She only knew the F1 king was Schumacher. But how terrifying he was on the track, she didn't know. What she just saw had already redefined her understanding of driving. The timing, angle, and speed, there wasn't a single error. In such a life-or-death moment, that reaction time and calculation ability were terrifying. Normal people simply couldn't do it. After the apocalypse, people had stronger nerves, but most only managed to go from crashing into others and screaming to being somewhat calm under stress. Not like the minibus driver, calm beyond human. Jiang Lusher glanced at Ying. As the base vehicle's manager, and with the starseed capable of calculating all angles in real time for the vehicle, Ying was just perfectly executing the starseed's guidance. Even if they couldn't dodge, the minibus could have switched to mining truck mode at the moment of impact. With its reinforced body, it might not have completely withstood the SUV, but Boss Zhong dreaming of killing them like that was pure fantasy. Of course, it was best not to let the vehicle take any damage. Jiang Lushur had just finished repairing it, he didn't want it getting wrecked again unless absolutely necessary. The explosion continued rumbling, and more zombies were approaching from all around. Buzz! The minibus stopped in the middle of the road. Jiang Lushur looked at the abandoned car by the roadside and said calmly, "Come out." Behind the abandoned vehicle, the smile on Boss Zhong's face had completely frozen. He swallowed hard, feeling his hand that was holding the gun trembling. In this kind of situation, the minibus actually managed to dodge. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. And now that he had, he almost wished he could gouge his own eyes out. Every time he thought his plan was flawless, this minibus would come and crush it completely. At this moment, he knew a gun was pointed at the abandoned car he was leaning on, and that minibus could charge at him at any second. Ah! Boss Zhong roared and dashed out, using his ability to the fullest. His speed in that instant even surpassed his usual limits. He dove straight toward the door of a nearby store. At that moment, Jiang Lushur raised his gun. His brain domain ability activated, and Boss Zhong's escape appeared in slow motion before his eyes. Boss Zhong sensed an intense life-and-death crisis, but in this situation, he had no way to dodge. Bang! Boss Zhong crashed heavily into the store. But when he tried to get up, an overwhelming pain engulfed him. Ah! One of his calves had been completely shattered. The broken part looked like minced red meat, with all the bones crushed, only a few strands were still holding it together. The pain was worse than death. In agony, he shakily reached for the handgun that had fallen just over a meter away, but now that short distance felt like a giant chasm. At that moment, footsteps echoed at the entrance. Boss Zhong looked toward the doorway in despair. Jiang Lushur stood there, staring at him coldly. "We found a usable car outside. Should I drag him back?" Zero walked in and asked. She glanced at Boss Zhong, a cold smile appearing at the corner of her mouth. "He brought so many zombies here. He should pay the price for that, right?" Boss Zhong probably guessed what Zero intended to do. He trembled and squeezed out a few words through his teeth. "Kill me. Kill me. Stop shouting. Save your strength," Zero said, walking over and yanking Boss Zhong up. She was petite but incredibly strong. Boss Zhong was tall and big, at least 180 pounds. Even missing a lower leg, he was still over 160, yet Zero grabbed him by the collar and dragged him straight into the bed of a small pickup truck. By now, some zombies had already appeared, attracted by the gunfire and explosions. Zero threw Boss Zhong into the truck bed, letting him bleed freely. The moment the zombies saw him, their blood-red eyes seemed to glow even brighter, like they were about to drip blood. As the zombies charged at him, Boss Zhong, though desperate to die, didn't want to be ripped apart alive. He dragged his broken leg, scrambling to the front of the truck bed, pressing himself against the cabin. As the minibus turned around and started moving, Zero also stepped on the gas. Grr! The zombies chased after the small pickup. Their monstrous speed was terrifying. Not only were they not shaken off, they seemed to be getting closer. Even from 20 or 30 meters away, Boss Zhong could already see their faces clearly, their dirty, sharp nails, and twisted, grinning mouths. The zombies stretched out their arms, desperate to tear Boss Zhong apart. Buzz! The minibus and the pickup returned to the factory, one after the other. Xiao Feng's team and the survivors were still fighting off the zombies. Thanks to the earlier help from the minibus, the pressure on them had greatly reduced. The once terrified survivors had found hope and were fighting more confidently. Also, the number of new zombies hadn't increased rapidly, another key reason they could hold out. That was all thanks to the minibus's horn and the explosion that followed. The explosion, smoke, and fire made some worry something had gone wrong. If Boss Zhong had managed to kill Jiang Lushur and his group, they'd all be doomed. Zhong's team and his minibus had truly shocked them, but Boss Zhong's cruelty and cunning were well known, and many feared him deeply. But soon, the minibus returned, followed by a strange small pickup. Some sharp-eyed people already noticed that in the truck bed was a blood-soaked figure with a terrified face. It was Boss Zhong. Behind him, a large horde of zombies was chasing. Though Boss Zhong had lost a leg, he was a mutant, physically stronger than most, and wouldn't bleed out quickly. That's why he was still conscious. And that consciousness made his suffering even worse. "Kill me. Just kill me already." Boss Zhong kept cursing and screaming in pain. Seeing him like that, hearing his pig-like screams, the survivors could hardly believe it. How long had it been? Just a moment ago, Boss Zhong was terrifying. In the blink of an eye, he had become just like the companions he had once tortured and killed. In front of Jiang Lushur's team, Boss Zhong was no different from the survivors he had abused. The man they were once terrified of, turned out to be as easy to deal with as a chicken. Then, Jiang Lushur's minibus blared its horn again. The fresh blood of a mutant, combined with the honking, immediately drew the zombies away from the factory gate. "Come on, all of you, over here," Jiang Lushur told him to keep honking. Some zombies started charging over. Except for the few still fighting Xiao Feng's group at the gate, most were now surrounding the minibus. Zombies came from all directions. Boss Zhong had lost all hope. Jiang Lushur remained calm. When the zombies had nearly surrounded the minibus, he said, "Drive." Bang! 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 The minibus blasted exhaust from the back and charged through the zombie horde, bursting out of the gate once again. The pickup followed closely behind. Zero stomped the gas and glanced in the rearview mirror, saying, "You better hold on tight." Buzz! The minibus and the pickup sped away down the street, dragging a massive wave of zombies behind them. Seeing this, the stunned survivors were left speechless again. That minibus had just made a round trip, and now it was leading away all the zombies. What kind of minibus was that? It was a battle tank. As for Boss Zhong, he used to love luring zombies with survivors' flesh, including this time. But he never imagined that one day, he'd be the bait. What a fitting end. Gunfire in the small town continued for a while, then gradually quieted down. We survived. Looking at the piles of zombie corpses in front of them, the survivors all felt like they had narrowly escaped death. This feeling, they had only experienced it during the early days of the apocalypse, when they had just managed to survive. After that, they became slaves under Boss Zhong's control. This time, they broke free from Boss Zhong, found the courage to fight zombies. Besides feeling relieved, they were also a little excited. "First, deal with the zombie corpses," Xiao Feng said. The survivors immediately reacted. After all, Xiao Feng and his people were professional soldiers, far more calm and organized than them. The first thing now was to clear the corpses. Otherwise, the heavy smell of blood could not only attract zombies again, but might also bring mutated beasts. Inside the factory were 2 large trucks. The survivors all went to load up the corpses. This factory was something they had worked hard to rebuild, and since they didn't want to give it up, they needed to clean it thoroughly. Even though the factory doors and gate were smashed, they could still be repaired and reused. Buzz! At that moment, the minibus returned. Its body was covered in blood. Remembering the shock of how it had charged through the zombies, the survivors all stopped what they were doing, a little frightened, and stared at the minibus. Behind the minibus, the small pickup was gone. It wasn't hard to imagine what had become of Boss Zhong. As for the zombies, no one knew where the minibus had lured them. They not only managed to lead away the horde, but also returned without a sound. "Captain Jiang." Xiao Feng's eyes lit up when he saw the minibus and walked up quickly. The soldiers straightened up as Jiang Lushur and his team got off the minibus. Actually, when they first set out, these soldiers thought that working with an ability user team would at least be mutually beneficial, even if they weren't stronger. But in the recent battle, Jiang Lushur's Stone Shadow team played the decisive role. The soldiers barely had a chance to even provide cover. As soldiers, they respected those with true strength. "Damn, there's at least an inch of blood stuck to it," Zhang Hai said, walking to the minibus and exaggerating while inspecting it. The vehicle was covered in sticky blood, on the body, wheels, and even window seams. The horror of charging through the zombie horde was clear. "All right, I'll wash it," Zhang Hai rolled up his sleeves and said. "Thanks," Jiang Lushur smiled. He looked at Xiao Feng and asked, "How is it over here? Any casualties?" "No casualties in our team. Thanks to your team taking on most of the pressure. Otherwise, the outcome could have been different." "One of the survivors was dragged away," Xiao Feng said. Most of the survivors were ordinary people, lacking combat experience, so casualties were hard to avoid. But without Jiang Lushur and his team, without this battle, they would have just continued dying slowly under Boss Zhong's torment. Actually, Xiao Feng's team's firepower had already covered the area in front of the survivors. The zombies the survivors had to face directly were already few. As a soldier, Xiao Feng felt he had done his part. These survivors weren't completely powerless, they had even helped Boss Zhong before. Jiang Lushur understood Xiao Feng's thinking and had no issue with it. The ones who were violent or had murderous intent among the survivors had already been dealt with by Jiang. As for the rest, the ones driven like puppets, he didn't care how Xiao Feng handled them. "Captain Jiang, our people already gathered Boss Zhong's stored supplies," Xiao Feng said. Boss Zhong had some weapons and a good amount of food. Jiang Lushur followed Xiao Feng into a separated room inside the factory. It had been both Boss Zhong's bedroom and warehouse. At this moment, some survivors were peeking inside, looking uneasy. Those supplies were basically the small town's entire stockpile. "Smells awful," Jiang Zhuiying immediately covered her nose upon entering. Though the room had fancy furniture, it was still inside a factory, mixed with all kinds of strange odors. Jiang Lushur glanced at the supplies: rice, flour, lots of dried food, and some preserved meat. Preserved meat was great for ordinary survivors, but for ability users, it was nothing special. Jiang Lushur had already stored plenty of rice, and better quality rice than Boss Zhong's. There was also some mutated beast meat, but not much. For someone like Jiang who always ate fresh meat, the smoked jerky wasn't appealing. Xiao Feng, on the other hand, clicked his tongue and said, "Didn't expect such a small place to have this much stuff." Jiang Lushur noticed a wooden box. He walked over and kicked the lid open. Shiny guns and ammunition appeared inside. "This knife's nice," Zero said, walking over and picking up a small blade from the box. She twirled the knife in her hand. The blade was black, sharp at the tip, and looked dangerous. But in her hand, it seemed light and agile. "What kind of knife is that?" Jiang Lushur asked. "FS fighting knife. When it was designed, it had only one purpose: killing. It's different from today's multi-purpose knives," Zero said, tossing and catching it smoothly. "You see, the handle, narrow at both ends, thick in the middle, makes it perfect for a forward stabbing grip. And it's made of brass, which gives it weight, helping in close combat. The surface is textured for grip. The blade is very sharp, double-edged, good for both cutting and stabbing." Jiang Lushur looked at Zero with some surprise. "You know a lot about this." "Had a bit of interest in this stuff before the apocalypse," Zero said. "A baby-faced girl into knives, pretty rare. Especially one who talked so passionately about how perfect a knife was for stabbing people. If you like it, keep it." Zero had performed well in this battle. As good as the knife was, Jiang Lushur didn't need it. He was more used to guns, and Ing already had a tri-edged military dagger. Jiang Lushur checked the rest of the weapons in the box and said, "I'll take some handgun and rifle ammo, and a gun. The rest, divide it among yourselves." He wasn't interested in the food. Preserved meat wasn't valuable to sell to survivor teams. The real currency now was still weapons, ammo, mutated beast meat, mutated crystals, and evolution crystals. Boss Zhong must have hidden his mutated crystals, right? Jiang Lushur rubbed his chin, looking around the room. Boss Zhong never traded with outsiders. His most valuable possessions should be the mutated crystals. Xiao Feng and his soldiers had no objections to Jiang Lushur's arrangements. "You, come here," Xiao Feng called over the survivor who had been the first to charge at the zombies. His shovel was covered in blood and mud, and his body was splattered with blood. The survivor glanced at the others, then walked over nervously. "I'll take some of the supplies as food for our journey. The rest, you can keep. But sitting here and using things up will get you nowhere. If you don't have the ability to establish your own base, it's best to head to the base city. If you want to wait here for us to come back, there are too many uncertain factors," Xiao Feng said. Heading to the base city would be dangerous for the survivors, but staying here was just as risky. They would only end up in another dead end. Xiao Feng was leading a small team. He couldn't even be sure they'd return alive, let alone escort these survivors safely to the base city. "We'll leave you some weapons too. Whether you go or stay, it's up to you," Xiao Feng added. The survivor, along with many behind him, heard this. He turned to look at the others, then turned back and said, "Thank you." In this situation, even if Jiang Lushur and Xiao Feng took all the supplies, the survivors couldn't resist. But Xiao Feng's words left them all silent. "To go to the base city or stay here?" "We found it," Sun Kuan said, pulling out a small bag from under the mattress. No one else wanted to touch Boss Zhong's bed. As soon as the bag was opened, a slight smile appeared on Jiang Lushur's face. 3 mutant crystals. As an ability user, Boss Zhong had to eat mutated beast meat. Whether these 3 crystals were hunted by him or stolen from survivor teams, they now belonged to Jiang Lushur. If Boss Zhong were still alive, this would have made him furious all over again. He had learned the value of mutant crystals from another survivor. When relocating, these 3 crystals were supposed to be his guarantee of survival. In the end, they ended up in Jiang Lushur's hands. "As usual, I'll keep the mutant crystals. This time, everyone gets a bigger share of the mutated beast meat." "Zero, you take 800 pounds too," Jiang Lushur said to Zero. Zero had also performed well this time. Even though she wasn't a team member, she had contributed, and Jiang wouldn't let that go unrewarded. Zero looked surprised. She hadn't expected Jiang to offer her a share of the spoils. 800 pounds of mutated meat was no small amount. And as an ability user, she did need it. She nodded and didn't refuse. 700 pounds is enough. "I already ate some earlier," Zero said. "All right." Since she said so, Jiang let it be. After loading up what they needed onto the vehicles, Jiang and his team returned to the hotel they had cleared out earlier. There was no way they would act together with the survivors, nor any reason to live together. Dinner was fragrant roasted meat. Jiang not only ate his fill, but also drank a can of cold beer. Sitting in the war room, looking at the sky gradually turning dark, and the even darker street of the small town with no lights at all, Jiang Lushi slowly sipped his beer. The cool, refreshing liquid slid down his throat as Jiang felt his body and the connection with the base vehicle. To him, the base vehicle felt alive. It was connected to him via the starseed, which resided in his mind. His ability to modify his body also came from the starseed. At that moment, Jiang felt like someone was watching him. He followed the gaze and saw Ran Xiyu sitting beside the hotel. When she noticed him looking, she smiled faintly. However, Jiang felt that behind the smile, there was a trace of worry. Encountering Boss Zhong and his group today had made Ran Xiyu even more worried about her sister. The closer they got to northern Jiangsu, the harder it was for her to control this anxiety. Jiang understood her feelings. He had a younger sister too. In the apocalypse, everyone held on to the hope that their loved ones might still be alive. Ran Xiyu's unease likely meant she also knew deep down that the chances were slim, that this trip might end in disappointment. Get some sleep, Jiang said in his mind. She probably heard that, right? The next morning, after breakfast, the convoy set out. Other than the unexpected trouble in the small town, the long stretch of road ahead passed through no man's land. There were buildings and zombies, but no sign of living people. Even if there were survivors, they were likely hiding in some corner. Jiang and his team weren't going to search for them on purpose. Only Xiaofeng's team made records of these areas. Along the way, they noticed that some zombies were clearly stronger than they were at the start of the apocalypse. Although not on the level of mutated zombies yet, it still made Xiaofeng concerned. Zombies were evolving too fast. Not only individual evolution, but group evolution as well. In cities, zombies had already replaced humans as a new destructive species, occupying the urban areas. By the fourth day, they finally saw living people when they reached a small city. 2 ability users and a group of ordinary people were hunting a mutated beast. The beast wasn't large, looked like a mutated wild cat. It was very agile. The survivors had retreated into their vehicle. The mutated beast immediately pounced, its claws tearing a long gash into the vehicle, producing a sharp screech. The vehicle's shell was as weak as paper against its claws. Just then, one of the ability users suddenly leapt forward, fast and forceful. A long iron rod in his hand pierced straight through the beast's lower abdomen. The sound of it sinking into flesh could be heard from afar. The beast let out a shriek. Several gunshots followed, hitting its body. The mutated beast struggled briefly, then fell to the ground, bleeding all over and twitching. It wasn't going to survive. Scenes of ability user teams killing mutated beasts were common. Without some skill, they wouldn't have survived till now. But these people didn't rush to load the beast onto their vehicle. They had all noticed the convoy not far away and were sitting in their vehicle, watching cautiously. A minibus, followed by an SUV, and military vehicles, this team of only 7 survivors with 1 vehicle was clearly outmatched, so they were naturally on guard. Jiang Lushi also looked at these people. They were already fairly close to northern Jiangsu. Were these survivors from Subei? Brother, we are friends of Xiang Shuihai. Who are you people? The ability user with the iron rod got out of the car and shouted across the air. He held the rod, his muscles tense, ready to react at any moment. At that moment, the minibus drove forward a few more meters, and the small survivor team became immediately nervous. Actually, the minibus didn't look all that threatening, but with the military vehicles following behind, these people dared not be careless. Those soldiers with live-round rifles, their black muzzles, were the real thing. The minibus window rolled down. A young man's face appeared in the seam of the window. I don't know Xiang Shuihai. I'd like to ask, are you survivors from northern Jiangsu? The ability user saw that Jiang Lushi showed no hostility. He seemed not very interested in the mutated beast they had killed either. The ability user's heart relaxed slightly. But at the same time he was surprised. You don't know Xiang Shuihai? You're from another region? Another ability user got out of the car and asked. This ability user was not tall, wore glasses, and he adjusted his glasses while speaking. At the same time he gave a look to others in the car, signaling them to get out and load the mutated beast corpse. Hearing the glasses wearer ask that, the iron rod ability user also realized, this convoy had out-of-town number plates, and their accent was from out of town. But at first he had never expected survivors from another region to come here. Those number plates, besides the minibus, were all Xiangzhou's. And Xiangzhou was very far from here. Could they be from Xiangzhou? But if survivors in this area had never heard of Xiang Shuihai, that would be too strange. Yes. Jiang Lushi nodded. There was nothing to hide. We count as survivors from northern Jiangsu. Our camp is in a suburban county next to northern Jiangsu. Xiang Shuihai is the name of a boss. Under him there are about 100 people, and over 10 teams. To stay alive here in northern Jiangsu, if you offend Xiang Shuihai, you definitely won't last long. We brothers come out using Xiang Shuihai's name, we'll all give some face, and help each other, the glasses wearer said calmly. Jiang Lushi heard that this man was trying to intimidate him a little, but he actually was somewhat interested in Xiang Shuihai. Shiyu, if we want to find your sister, we can first try to find the Xiang Shuihai. The local boss definitely knows a lot of information, finding someone is easier than us fishing in the sea. Jiang Lushi turned to Ran Shiyu. In this apocalypse finding someone means going to survivor gathering areas. If northern Jiangsu had no established safe zones, then you can only go to these small team territories. Ran Shiyu lightly nodded, Brother Jiang, I'll follow you. Can you take us to find Xiang Shuihai? We have a deal we want to do. Jiang Lushi turned back and asked the glasses wearer. The glasses wearer's eyes flickered with hesitation, but he also had no basis to refuse. And this convoy looked powerful. If indeed there was a deal, Xiang Shuihai would benefit a lot, and he would gain Xiang Shuihai's recognition. So the glasses wearer after a brief thought said frankly, no problem, we just finished a hunt, we were about to return. You can come with us. Thank you then. Jiang Lushi said. Captain Jiang. At this time, Xiao Feng also got out of the vehicle and walked over. Captain Jiang, we have gone farther than expected, next we are preparing to head back. Xiao Feng said. On this journey, he was filled with gratitude to Jiang Lushi and his Stone Shadow team. If not for Jiang and them, this scattered casualty situation he dared not even imagine. He heard that Jiang Liushi's team would go with this survivor small team to northern Jiangsu, so naturally it was time to part. Okay, you guys go. Jiang Lushi said. At that moment Xiao Feng suddenly snapped off a standard military salute and said, Yes. Captain Jiang. That salute was Xiao Feng expressing respect to Jiang Liushi's group, also thanks. After the salute, Xiao Feng turned and returned to his vehicle. Jiang Lushi looked at those military vehicles too, his heart moved somewhat. The return journey was actually very dangerous. They had fewer casualties coming here, but the way back was not certain. They had traveled so far, a new survivor gathering area lay just ahead, yet they still chose without hesitation to return. Such soldier spirit, Jiang Lushi admired. The glasses wearer on the side stared blankly for a moment, so those military vehicles were leaving? Then let's set off too. The glasses wearer smiled. After he got into the car, another ability user immediately said, What's going on, why did those soldiers all leave? He turned to look at the minibus and said, Since that's the case, we don't have to pay them any mind. What he feared was those soldiers. Now the military vehicles had turned and left. Just a minibus and an SUV remained, nothing scary anymore. This ability user at first glance saw the Hummer modified SUV, his eyes lit up. Didn't you see how polite that officer was to that kid? Might have some strength. His ability wave wasn't strong, but that woman talking to him, her ability wave was very strong. There's another person in their car whose ability wave is strong too, the glasses wearer said under his breath. Those soldiers left in front of them, yet the kid he referred to was still calm, going with them, obviously relying on something. Don't be so strong in limbs, weak in mind. What strength are we anyway? Xiang Shuihai doesn't look down on us. Move less, think less, you'll live longer, the glasses wearer said. He also had ideas, but he had more self-awareness. The ability user listened. Though his expression was somewhat dismissive, he quietly shut his mouth. I hope these people honestly take us there. On the minibus, Zero watched the car ahead, with zombie corpses tied to its roof, and spoke slowly. They should. The glasses wearer isn't stupid. Ran Shiyu said. When the glasses wearer was talking to Jiang Lushi, she had been sensing his emotional changes. Zero, you were originally in northern Jiangsu, you never heard of Xiang Shuihai? Jiang Lushi asked. Zero shook her head, northern Jiangsu has no large safe zones. Survivor small teams each cling together, quite scattered. And I left for a while. These bosses, owners' names, maybe have changed several times. This Xiang Shuihai, I really haven't heard of him. But different bosses act differently. We don't know which type Xiang Shuihai is. Zero said. Doesn't matter what type he is. If there's business on the table, we won't refuse. Jiang Lushi said. After following the vehicles of the glasses wearer and his group for several hours, the minibus arrived at a small county town. Outside the town a deep trench had been dug, many sharp wooden stakes planted within it, and a row of barbed wire fences erected. One section of the barbed wire fence had clearly been torn open with a large gap, then repaired. Inside the trench one could see many skeletal remains. The color of the soil looked very strange, as though soaked in blood. At the entrance to the town many vehicles were parked, and by the roadside sat numerous ordinary survivors whose eyes looked a little numb. Due to long nutritional deficiency they all looked very gaunt. When the glasses wearer and his group had just stopped the car, some survivors immediately surrounded them, quietly begging. "Go! Get away, we're working here, we don't need you pieces of trash. Stay away from me, you're filthy." Another ability user pushed open the car door. A big strong man climbed out carrying a long iron rod, stood before those survivors and impatiently waved them off. "This is Xiang Shuihai's territory. Your vehicle is too large. The roads in this town are narrow. Why don't you stop here? The SUV can go in instead," the glasses wearer said. Jiang Lushur had come here to do business, and naturally wanted to avoid trouble. Besides, the base vehicle had autopilot, so he wasn't worried about anything happening inside. If the deal wasn't smooth, he could contact the starseat in his mind and drive the minibus in himself. "Let's get off the car," Jiang Lushur said. "Zhang Hai, Sun Kuan, you two stay here and watch the vehicle. We'll go." After getting off the car, Jiang Lushur spoke to Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan. There were only a few seats in the SUV, and going with too many people made little sense. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan had no objection. Ying stayed behind too. Jiang Lushur and the others got into the SUV. Jiang Lushur sat in the driver's seat. Seeing several girls emerge from the minibus, the glasses wearer froze for a moment, and the iron rod ability user's eyes went wide. No wonder they had a minibus, so many beautiful girls on board. That is living well. As another ability user, how come he didn't get such treatment? The glasses wearer couldn't help taking a few extra glances at Li Yusin and the others. Girls like these, he rarely encountered them before the apocalypse. Even if he did, he wasn't a guy who could meet them. When these beautiful women inside. What a luxurious way to live. As fellow ability users, why didn't he have such fortune? Even the glasses wearer couldn't help but glance a few more times at Li Yusin and the others. These kinds of girls were out of reach even before the apocalypse. Just seeing them was rare, let alone forming connections. As soon as the girls stepped out, they became a striking sight. Even the numbed survivors by the roadside looked over. Jiang Zhuyin carried a large black duffel bag. The glasses wearer noticed that while it seemed light in her hand, the sound of metal clinking from inside made it clear the bag held a lot. If he introduced a big deal to Xiang Shuihai, maybe he'd get noticed. This out-of-town survivor group looked strong, and building good relations could benefit him too. Being known by Xiang Shuihai wasn't just about status, it meant access to more intel. There were no official safe zones in northern Jiangsu. Most area information came from survivors, who sold it to local bosses like Xiang Shuihai. He would then distribute intel to his men. The more trusted, the better the information, which meant better hunting efficiency and faster growth. To gain Xiang Shuihai's favor, one needed strength or value. Providing deals, like this one, was a way to get noticed. Thinking of this, the glasses wearer beamed. "I'll drive another car over. Our blue sky team isn't that strong, but I can take you to see Xiang Shuihai. Oh, I haven't introduced myself, I'm Luo Junjiang, captain of the blue sky team." "Thanks. We're the Shuriying team. I'm the captain, Jiang Lushur," Jiang replied calmly. He knew Luo Junjiang wasn't being nice for free, but as long as he wasn't malicious, Jiang didn't care what his motives were. Luo returned to the iron rod man and said, "Old Hey, I'm leaving this to the brothers. Come with me." "What for?" "This has nothing to do with me. I'm not going. I've been hunting outside for 2 days, fought today, then rushed back. I want to relax," Old Hey grinned. "Damn you. Always thinking with your pants. You'll never amount to anything. Fine, stay here. You short-sighted fool." Luo glared and left with another car, leading Jiang's group. Old Hey's face darkened. He spat in the direction of their vehicles, muttering, "Kissing up to anyone with power, disgusting." He turned to the minibus, catching a glimpse of Ying at the wheel. Her stunning looks, tight outfit outlining her figure, and cold expression left a deep impression. But before he could look longer, the minibus turned and followed the SUV to a nearby empty lot. It had to be parked there, as the gate was too narrow. Old Hey watched the minibus drive away, then climbed into his own vehicle. "Damn it. Let's go blow off steam." In this apocalypse, most ordinary survivors in these clusters had no powers. Unless they had a rare skill, men did hard labor, and many women became tools for others in exchange for food. Old Hey headed straight for an inn, now turned entertainment center. But even as women served drinks, he couldn't muster interest. They were decent-looking but thin, pale, lifeless-eyed, nothing like Jiang Liushur's girls. He used to think having power would make women fall at his feet for food. But later, he realized there were too many stronger than him. His turn never came. Even top dogs with dozens of men and cars weren't surprising, but some random guy could have so many beauties? And Luo Junjiang, a former exec from a prestigious school, always looked down on people like him. He knew Luo only teamed up with him out of convenience. Seeing Luo now eagerly helping a stranger's team, just because they had military escort before, hoping to latch onto a powerful ally, it disgusted old He. He even feared Luo would kick him out of the Blue Sky team if Xiang Shuahai took notice. They started that team together, how could he just be cast aside? As this possibility burned in his mind, his fists clenched with a crack. Boss He, not as eager as usual today, the inn's hostess, Sister Ma, cautiously approached, noting his sour face that scared the girls. Get lost. Old He snapped. Ma jumped and quickly backed away. What's his problem? She muttered inside, not daring to speak out. Then she saw a group entering and her eyes lit up. She rushed over. Brother Wu. Long time no see. Must have had a great hunt? Wu was the bald leader, his scalp crisscrossed with scars. He looked fierce. Ma flattered him with practiced fear. Wu grinned. Pretty good. Took down 2 mutant beasts. One was a big one, 7 or 8 tons. 7, 8 tons? That must be huge. You're amazing, Brother Wu, she said, feigning shock. Wu clearly enjoyed the praise. He slapped her rear hard, making her squeal theatrically. Old He recognized Wu's group, 6 ability users, lots of guns, top 5 in Xiang Shuahai's territory. Wu's main hobby was women, he'd killed dozens during play. Even Ma feared him but had to treat him well. The women here, seeing Wu's group, turned pale and backed off, terrified they might be next. Most had been forced here, and with a man like Wu, torture to death was likely. Got anything fresh? Tired of the same few girls over and over? Wu said. Just then, he saw Old He approaching. Brother Wu, I've got something fresh for you.
Did you enjoy the story, guys? I hope you did. Support this video with a like and a comment. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.